Hey everyone out there in virtual space. We are excited to be with you. Welcome to the second day of our 5-day special edition symposium, Viral Awakening from Global Chaos to a Divine World. So today we have a very highly conscious group of Torah experts who will be talking. I hear background noise from one of the Torah experts. They're talking about coronavirus and co-creation, moving from chaos to consciousness. So that should be really, really fun. And as always, my intention is to air as many of your questions as possible. So please send them in on the web chat box. If you're on the web, if you're on the phone, that's going to be hard to do. You can also type them in the comments bar in the Facebook stream, which hopefully will keep going for today. Yesterday we had some issues, but hopefully today is a new day, and that won't be the case. So we'll see as many as I can get to, as I can field to our panel. So introducing our panel to you, we have the wonderful Sarah Yehudit Schneider, wonderful Rabbi Amichai Cohen, and the wonderful Rabbi Doniel Katz, who together will explore this amazing topic. And I just want to say that, I guess I'm in a laughing mood right now, but there's something very special about having more than one person together. Like, everybody that I interview and I myself, everybody's teacher and an innovator of sorts and a leader of sorts. So many authors, we have an author here multiple times, So it's just, everybody has their kav, their line, their approach, their perspective. And that's a fantastic thing. And it's, in a way, sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's even more fantastic when people get together and discuss and even debate, like look at different perspectives, because it always leads to something deeper. The more angles, the more truth. Anyway, so that said, let's just get started. And I think I want to just ask you, coronavirus and co-creation, that's coming from my perspective. I feel very much like, despite the fear, despite the undeniable tragedies and suffering, which I pray, we are all praying, should end completely and instantly. That's what Geula is about. Galus is full of suffering and tragedy anyway. This is a little bit accelerated, to say the least, but that's what we want to have end. So I think everybody here believes, everybody who teaches Torah from this perspective, this deeper, innovative perspective, believes that they're, I guess everybody who believes in Torah believes that this is part of God's plan that's going to happen randomly. Whoever instigated it, or if it was a bat that someone ate, or if it was a bioweapons lab, or whatever, does not matter, because this is here, and it's here in order to bring us somewhere. So we can start by being in those two places at once, that it is obviously something that we pray to have ended. And it is part of the general larger paradigm that we work to have ended, that the world is created to end. We're ushering in a new era. So just speak to that, whoever wants to start. Like, what has it got to do with co-creation? What does it have to do with consciousness? Like, who wants to, just anybody chime in? I see you smiling. Sorry, you want to start?
Well, it's interesting that I came across my desk. Someone emailed me a PDF of it's called Adam Yashar, which is the Kamarna Rebbe's teachings about what to say and what to pray when you're in the midst of a magefa, of a plague.
Right.
And mostly what he does there is he kind of collects all the different psukim and passages where the word nagaf or the word magefa appears. And then, though, he does the same thing for the incense offering, and which is the secret, he says, of staying the plague, and based on the fact that this mystery of the Ketoret, the incense offering, was revealed to Moshe by the angel of death himself. And based on, I think probably people are familiar with the incident where Korach attempts to usurp the priesthood, and a sinkhole swallows him up, and his cohort's alive. And
don't assume that many people are familiar, but don't assume that everybody is. I'm sure that not everybody
okay.
is. But anyway, yeah.
So in that in that incident, the people, instead of seeing this as a clear proof of Korach's guilt and Moshe's virtue, they accuse Moshe of murdering Korach in this dramatic way, presumably because Moshe's ego was offended by Korach's accusations of nepotism. And so in defense of Moshe, Hashem sends a plague upon the people, and Moshe instructs Aaron to take this incense pan and, with incense burning on it, and to place himself between the dead and the living. And Aaron obeyed, and in that way he stayed the plague. And so the Kamarna Rebbe then understands that somehow this incense offering is the tool that we have in our tool belt to resist and hopefully even to disarm a plague. And so he then proceeds to elaborate upon all the kind of Kabbalistic Shemot and Yehudim that are embedded in the passages of the Ketoret. And it's all very interesting and also very abstract. But it is possible to just like explore, like it seems like one of the important explorations that we need to do at this time is to try to kind of extract, what is this incense offering? And what is it about it that somehow it possesses this power to stay a plague? And so I have what to say about that, but I think I'll stop there and just.
No, I don't think you should stop there. I think you should say, you're talking about staying the plague. That's not the right place to stop.
Okay. So
give us something to work with.
So, well, I think, so first of all, this is still a little bit abstract, but I found it very interesting that, that kind of like just, for me, it's always good to start with Pshat and so talking about what is it that's so special about the Ketoret that it possesses this power? And it seems clearly that it has to be related to its distinguishing feature of any incense, but especially of this, which is its intoxicating aroma that would catapult the Cohen Gadol into an altered state of consciousness that really was enabling the most profound dveikut that's possible for a human being on the planet, at least according to our tradition. And so, like dealing with it on a more, I want to deal with it on a more practical level, but I also need to say that, because I find it interesting, that part of the incense offering's power to defy death, to prevail over death, to cause death to cower, so to speak, is because it activates what's called the Zayin Tikkune Resha, the 7 brain centers that mark our Kabbalistic path of inner awakening. And the lowest of them is called Chotma, nose, which is obviously our organ of scent. It's the place in our body that receives the aroma of the incense offering and processes it. And so the Zohar, speaking about the incense offering, it says that, I could say it in Hebrew, but I'll just say it in English, that the smell of the, this is a quote, the smell of the incense, through the smell of the incense, the nose, the chotem or chotma activates and contracts inwardly until the odor is drawn in and brought up to the thought, and all fuses into a single will. And so the Zohar's telling us that the incense offering enters through the nose and then traverses this path of awakening and presumably activates, some people say it's the 6th, some people say it's the 7th of these brain centers, called Tala de Beducha, which is the crystalline dew, which is also known as the dew of Techiyat HaMetim. It's the dew that will be used to resurrect the dead. And the idea being that this dew, this Tala de Beducha, which is, it's a dew, but it's also a state of consciousness, brings or awakens such an expanded state of consciousness and it's such a potent force of paradigm shift that it can actually revive the dead. And so on a very abstract level, that's what the Ketoret's about. But we don't have the incense offering anymore. And so we can't wave our fire pan in front of the corona outbreak. But we can extract the essence of its message and see how that might, like the essence of the Ketoret that's kind of relevant and accessible to us even now, how to apply that to the challenge, to the Magefa at hand. And there's lots to say about that, but I don't want to take up this time, so I'm going to pause and let
You can't
Okay,
stop
well,
now. I
definitely
mean, we want to know how you're going to apply it. There's
Yeah,
people
give us some-
dying. So you heard it. This is Sakadas Nefashis. You can't say, I have the cure for cancer, but we're not going to go on.
I don't want to take up too much time.
What's the Bekitza? What's the antidote? Give us in one sentence.
I can't do it in one sentence.
2 sentences.
Well, so I think part of like kind of the understanding what's happening in there is to from like in terms of my exploration of it. So I first, like what struck me was first to look at the difference between the reach nichoach, which is the pleasant scent of the animal sacrifices, versus the sweet scent of the incense offering. And as everyone knows, so Rashi explains that reach nichoach, the sweet savor of the animal sacrifices, he defines that as nachas ruach, which he says is when a person expresses a will or a preference or a desire or a request, and someone fulfills that request with willing and loving service. And that produces nachas ruach. We want something, and exactly what we wanted has come to pass. And so the animal sacrifices, in that sense, represent our mitzvah practice. Hashem has asked us for these 613 things, and we fulfill them. Reach nichoach, nachas ruach. But it's interesting to note that in the animal sacrifices, the fire causes the animal to disintegrate, whereas in the incense offering, the fire releases the hidden beauty of the barks and the resins, that each ingredient makes its own unique contribution, which then wafts into the others, and there's a kind of a combined scent that's greater than the sum of its parts. So the incense offering is more of a shared pleasure. Both the Cohen and metaphorically Hashem, they both enjoy the sweet scent. The incense draws them into a face-to-face encounter of shared and mutual enjoyment. And so it's kind of like the difference between prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh. Most consider prophecy higher than Ruach HaKodesh, but Ramban, Rabbi Bachaya, Rab Sadok actually consider Ruach HaKodesh the higher transmission. And true, the prophet can say, Ko Amar Hashem, certain that he's delivering God's word, which is not the case with Ruach HaKodesh. But in prophecy, the seer's personality must go underground, for the personality's human shortcomings would distort the signal. Whereas in Ruach HaKodesh, there's a partnership. Our personalities are active, they're involved, they're essential. We exert ourselves below to try to solve the problem or answer the question, and that exertion itself creates the kli that pulls down the guidance and the insight, i.e. the Ruach HaKodesh. So if the purpose of creation is to actualize the potential of relationship, then this happens in a most consummate way through Ruach HaKodesh, where we share with Hashem the reverie of creative expression, of creative exertion. And so the animal korbanot are Hashem commanding us and us obeying. The incense is the offering, really, is us offering our unique creative expression of our using the resources and elements of our life to create a sweet savor, to allow the fires of life to release the hidden beauties of our soul, the creative fruit of our labors. And so in this sense, the incense offering is a kind of, the Talmud defines magefa as a situation where hashgacha klalit overrides hashgacha pratit. A magefa is a tsunami.
The fate of the collective overrides the fate of the
Like
individual.
Hashem's individual providence, like tailored providence to us individually, versus Hashem's providence to the collective unit. And so a magefa is a tsunami of virulence that sweeps through the city or the country, or in our case, the planet, and does not distinguish, as Talmud says, does not distinguish between righteous and wicked. In Hashgacha Pratis, Hashem custom tailors the circumstance of our life based on our merits and our strivings. Every moment is a communication between Hashem and our particular soul. But a magefa overrides all that, and it treats everyone as an equally worthy victim. And so the incense offering is a kind of protest to the magefa that is the magefa is trying to eliminate our uniqueness and individuality and reduce us to this much of a vulnerable klal. And so, and so here we are with a world that's turned upside down, and our first instinct is to do what we always do, to say more Tehillim, to take on another mitzvah, to take on another stringency, to try to keep life as normal as possible. What'd you say?
Wash our hands a lot.
Right.
Not that I'm not washing my hands, I am.
Right. So, and to try to keep things from changing. But that's not the message of the incense offering, which is asking us to find our creativity and bring that to the table. Beginner's mind, everything I know, everything I've done, it may not be relevant to this moment. This moment is new, and it's calling for a creative response. Hashem has turned the world upside down. He's trying to shake us out of our habits. And so each one of us needs to kind of assess our resources and our responsibilities and the bases we need to cover, and invent a response that will work to make the best of this challenge. And so I, like the Kamarna Rebbe, I was struck by this very interesting teaching by the Kamarna Rebbe, not from his Magefa pamphlet, but from his commentary on Megillat Esther. But he brings this teaching from the Maggid of Mezrich, who's commenting on a passage from the Zohar. The passage from the Zohar reads, Ve'it kashetet b'kishutin delo havu, which means the Shechina is bedecked in regalia that have never been in the world. And that's a quote from the Zohar. And the Maggid says, Torah and mitzvot are jewels and ornaments that have already been in the world. But when a person engages in worldly matters and remains connected with Hashem, they are bedecking the Shechina with jewels that have never been before in the world. For that configuration of circumstances and challenges has never happened before. And this is, in the Maggid's own words, chashuv yoter, even a more important offering than the mitzvot that we do in response to the commands.
You could directly then make the connection. You are making the connection between the Ketoret and the actual activation of each of us in our ability to create from a new place in this world. Create or co-create. It's beautiful.
Right, like that creation is bringing the scent of our soul out into the world. And so, and so here we are, we're holed up in our houses in circumstances that have never been before, not for us individually, not for us collectively. And it's like the challenge on our plate is to find what is the most good-serving, God-serving, and spiritually productive option for this moment, and to choose it with the whole heart. And that is a creative effort. there's no rule book. There's nothing we can look to guide us. This is like new territory.
Mm. Well, thank you. Beautiful. Looks like we lost Reb Doniel meanwhile, but oh, here he is. Ow. Oh, you're on mute. Okay, Amichai, did you want to, yeah.
So
Speak to that, or speak from your own creative place.
Well, it would be a great thing to just keep on subject and to kind of all flow together, because I think that's a really great thing to do. So I think it's brought down in the name of the Ruzhner. I think I saw brought down that the root word for Magifa is Negef, and it starts off with the letter Nun. And it's very interesting that the only letter that is not found in the Ashrei, the Gemara says, is the letter Nun, because that corresponds to Nofel. And therefore the letter Samech is Somech Hashem L'chol HaNoflim. God protects or buttresses all those who fall down. And so the root word of Magifa is Negef, because it starts off with the letter Nun, which corresponds to falling. And then the next letter is Gimel, which has to do with giving. Gomel, the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos. Gimel Dalet is Gomel Dalim. First is giving to the impoverished. And so it's Gimel, and then it ends off with a Pei. And the fixing of the Magifa, or the Negef, is really the fixing of the letter Nun, essentially. Which is the loss of consciousness. The Arizal says that the gematria of cholev, ill, of sick, is 49, because there's 49 gates, but then the 50th gate. So in other words, a person could be on great levels, but if they're missing the next stage, the letter Nun, getting into that, then we're ill. And essentially we're ill as individuals, as a society, if we don't have that letter Nun. And so the fixing of
don't lose your thought. I just want to translate for you, if I can, and correct me if this is not correct. But just for those not familiar, the 50 levels, which the Torah talks about 50 levels of consciousness. The 49 are what we can achieve on our own. The 50th, the Nun, is 50, which is divine consciousness, basically. Like, I look at it as the gateway between finite and infinite. Would you want to elaborate, tweak that? Or?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
So actually he brings down, very interesting, he brings down that the antidote to that is Geffen. I don't know if there's such a medicine for, Geffen, maybe wine, right?
Okay, you heard it here. If everyone gets drunk on wine, then that will be the cure for Corona.
Wait, let's
Everyone get it out.
Take
Tell
a break
Donald Trump right now.
Sorry, Yehudit actually has homeopathic remedies including the Geffen.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. So again, Geffen means something spiritually as well. So the Geffen, he says, is the same letters as Negef, and it starts off with.
Wow. Oh wow.
Yeah, and it starts off with Gimel, which is Gomel, and so the problem and the difference between the Negef and the antidote to that is that the Negef really starts off with this will to receive for the self, and it's an egocentric level of being, which is essentially the reason for the lack of consciousness, is our egocentric shelled protection of our own selves in a sense, as individuals and in the greater sense. And then the antidote to that is Gomel. It starts off with Gimel, and then it ends off with a long Nun. And that long Nun is the drawing down of consciousness, which is drawing down that antidote. But what I was thinking about when you were talking about having the Ketoret nowadays, what does that really refer to? Rabbi Shimon in the Zohar, at the end of the Idra says, before passing away, Rabbi Shimon says, "Echad katirna itkatarna," that I am one. Before passing away, he saw himself as being one completely, and this concept is brought out multitude amount of times in the writings of the Alter Rebbe and the Rabbeim, etc., talking about this concept of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. What was he talking about? What was the correlation of the Ketoret? Well, the Ketoret means to be bound. That's what Ketoret means in Aramaic. Qatar, not the country, is kuf tet nun, so feet, right? A long nun is reish katir na is the idea of being bound, being connected, and it's being connected to that 50 gates of Bina, being connected on the spiritual level, which is what the whole writings of the inner dimension of Torah is all about. And that is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai really spells out for us 2,000 years ago. It's what the Baal Shem Tov spelled out for the Arizal, the Baal Shem Tov, all the greats have spelled out for us that what is the Ketoret essentially nowadays. The Ketoret nowadays is what's the antidote, is the Pnimius Torah. It's the inner aspect of Torah. The inner aspect of Torah, being aware, being having our consciousness more refined and expanded, is the antidote to the Magifot. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says this unequivocally in the Zohar. In the end of days, there's going to be epidemics, spiritual epidemics, physical epidemics, and all the tzaddikim talk about this. And what's the medicine? The medicine is the pnimius Torah, the inner aspect of Torah. So we've got the inner aspect of Torah, and I'd love to hear some of your thoughts of how we could make that more of a reality for all of us that are listening, all of us that are on the panel, and how we could make that more of a reality in the world. So
that's just adding to what you're saying, Rabbi Amichai, that just building, it's the obvious Torah that we all know that chaleh, to be sick, the word chaleh is numerical value 49. These are teachings from the Baal Shem Tov and the way of Yikra, right? He says that's really the small aleph, the makor of all refuahs. The Baal Shem Tov was a healer. That was his day job, so to speak, a physical healer. He's a healer of hearts and healer of souls, but primarily a physical healer through the hearts and through the souls. So he said that the essence of all sickness is that the word for sickness, a chaleh, a sick person, is numerical value 49, because they've fallen, the chasa shlemut. They're lacking the perfection of the nun shorim of bina, of kedusha, the alma decheres, of all these aspects of freedom, of Shifra was saying, of higher consciousness, perfected consciousness. When we fall into the ego, when we fall into the eitzadas tovara, the world of fragmentation, the world of separation, I love you or I hate you, and that's kind of where America and the whole world was before this whole thing started, right? Such incredible division and dichotomy and fragmentation. And the Baal Shem Tov says, the way, the root of all of healing is to lift the 49 up to the 50th, is to reintegrate the fallen back to its source. The Baal Shem Tov, other tzaddikim say that the essence of all sickness comes from disconnection, when our bodies are disconnected to our source, to our devekas, to our light, to our kedusha. Therefore, the source of our refuah is healing. That's why refuah, we know, is the oisius connected to teferes, which is balance and harmony of the two opposites, of the two dichotomies, and uniting them back together.
I missed something that you said. Can you just repeat the last sentence, because you faded out? I didn't hear.
I didn't say anything interesting. So when I'm not saying interesting,
okay, then skip it. Then just skip it.
To not bore anyone. The word refuah, right? Reish, pei, fei, aleph, right? Is pe'er, is connected to the word teferes, which is the harmony of opposites, as we know. So when the ego self, when the body self is overriding the neshama self, the source self, the bechina, the aspect of the 50th level. And our emotions and our beliefs what we call adas de sitra achra, adas de truma, our fallen beliefs are causing what's called timtum alev, blockages of the heart, emotional blocks. And once it falls from emotional blocks, it goes into the body, and that is ultimately the root and source of all illness in the world. So the tikkun to illness, according to the Baal Shem Tov, is to lift up the illness back to its shorish, back to its source. To ein ad muvada is to find, even in the darkness, even in the suffering, even in the pain, even the ego, the divinity. That's for sure connected to what Yehudit was saying. This degree of having an identity of self, but that identity of self is sourced in a higher place. That technically, prophecy is higher, right? Technically, but this deeper understanding that we're all excited by, all as kind of Geula Dik and Neshamas, is the fact that is the Shem ultimately doesn't want an elimination of the lower world, because he had that before he began the world. Hashem wants a kiyum, a malchus. He wants a presence of a lower world that is aligned and connected and sourced, right? That's the Lashon Ketoras, as the Rabbi was saying, that it's sourced and connected. So there's separation which is connected. That's ultimately goal. So we have to have a body, but the body has to have divine energy flowing through it. We have to have emotions, but tikkun amidas, the realignment of amidas, that amidas should be passionate expression and revelation of higher beliefs and higher light, right? Rather than being emotionless. Emotionless is not a higher state. Freud, in yeshiva, sometimes I think in the Chabad, they misunderstand the term, not in Chabad, but some people will pick up the time and say the moyach is shaled out of leiv, which means you're not supposed to be emotional, you're just supposed to be rational, intellectual. I mean, anyone that says has never read Chabad Svarim, I've never read the Rebbe Rashab, they never read the Tanya, which is talking about the Av and the Yira and all these things. So what it means is that the moyach, the conscious, is supposed to align and elevate the emotions till we're living with deep emotions. And that's the source of all healing. When you've worked in healing in any dimension, even the Rambam says, for sure, modern psychology says, and
hang on. Don't lose your thought.
Yes.
Don't lose your thought. But there's a request, very reasonable request, for terms to be translated. Hebrew terms. You're going.
Terms means a core idea, and translation means to say it in another language.
Okay.
I'm translating it for you. So
no, these are really, really important concepts, and part of to answer just step one of Amichai, Rabbi Amichai's question. What can we do that he posed to her is we can bring things into language that people can easily relate to, and then move that up. I think that's really important. Yeah, I know you do that, but let's just do it now.
All I was leading to say on the most practical level is the work on a Yehudit says something very deep and profound and rich of what incense and ketoras represents on the basic level. This from the much more simple level is the idea that there's 11 elements, and each one is in a state of bittul. It's basically completely nullified and completely released. And we know that 10 is the property of holiness and integration. And we know in some elements that 11 is the property of negativity, of all the elements ultimately fragmented. And without going too deep than we need to, for the sake of all just trying to bring this into something practical in some way, is the idea that the ultimate separation is what's between Das Elyon and Das Tachton, which means my higher consciousness and my lower consciousness are not aligned. And even though I have 10 properties, my core self and my lower self are not aligned. And the essence of that you just burn it. Everything is ash down to its root. Anything is only ash to its root means anything is only its essential self, bittul yesh, and nothing more, no more ego based than that. And the idea that the Baal Shem Tov says is that when we're in a state of devekas, this is the root of all healing. When we learn meditation, when we learn to experience the higher consciousness, then we're latching on to the Eitz Chaim, to the deeper inner place of light. As Yehudit said, the Talmud says, at the time of a Shas Megefa, the time of a Megefa, that there's a point,
being plague. Megefa
the time of a plague, that Tzaddikim and Rishayim, masters, and people doing all the right things, people doing all the wrong things, the plague just goes through everyone. It doesn't make a distinction. But that's when we're still clinging to the Eitz Das Tov V'Ra. This person is good and this person is bad. You're still living in the world of duality. But the Baal Shem Tov taught, and he practiced this, that when you want to heal yourself and when you want to heal another, You have to go lamala minatam v'das. You have to go higher than the lower consciousness of I am good and I am bad and I am better than the worst, and I'm more religious and you're more secular, therefore I'm more protected. We have to transcend all of the duality, and to get to a higher place. That's why it seems that this power really unleashed of this plague for most of us, it became real around the week of Purim. As I was saying yesterday in another conference, the essence of Purim is ad lo yada, which usually means higher than consciousness, but ad is also the letters of das, of dea, which means there's a knowledge higher than knowledge. There's an awareness higher than
Das meaning
consciousness, awareness, the awareness of self. Right?
There's a mitzvah there's a commandment on Purim to drink until you don't know the difference. You can't distinguish between the hero and the anti-hero, Mordechai and Haman. So that's what.
Shifra, Chana, it's really handy to have you around, by the way. Thanks for being here. So all I was saying, that this idea of healing according to the Baal Shem Tov, his mechanism begins, and many people that heal on a deeper level, I know Shifra, Chana, that's something you know about, they all know that you have to begin by transcending the ego consciousness into a higher state called Devekut. And Ketavos is the language of Devekut, of connection, as the Rabbi was saying. And in that place where we're higher than distinctions, we're higher than duality, it's in that place where we can take what appears to be darkness of a disease, or what appears to be the broken emotions, or the, whatever negativity is built up in the body, and we can see the good in that and elevate it and release it. And I think that this idea of going into isolation, which is called bidud in Israel, it's also the root of the word hisbodedus. And it's like Hashem is bringing us all into a place
which means hisbodedus. Explain.
Which is the deepest kind of meditation, according to the Kabbalistic tradition. And Avraham ben Rambam actually teaches, a great sage, the son of Maimonides, actually teaches the definition of hisbodedus is to be able to. It literally means self-isolation, to cut yourself off from the world. And practically speaking, when the Kabbalists would meditate, they would actually leave the city, leave the marketplace, leave the noisy family downstairs, and come to the inner chambers and put on white and dress up. So it means isolate myself from the noise outside. But the Kabbalists actually say the essence of true meditation of hisbodedus means to isolate yourself from the noise, from the ego, from the imagination, from the dimyon and the external part of my consciousness, to move to an inner place of light and deeper connection. So the fact that we're all being told as an entire society world to do hisbodedus, to get out of the external noise, shevi al taseh, to do yishuv adas, and not to be engaged, to return to consciousness, to return to higher connection, and not say be involved in a sea in our imagination, the physical world. And that is the source of healing, because it's the source when we transcend our bodies, transcends our essence. But that's not the healing, is when we can bring the body and bring the essence up and realign it to the source. That's when the blessing and the influx and the abundance and all these nice words can really come down and transform us and heal us. That's the goal, and that's the first.
I'd like to say something about that. That's first of all, the fact that we're all at home, the fact that we are isolated, so to speak, and this Shabbat was a time of isolation for so many of us. I think brought a different dimension to us in terms of, definitely agreed that the concept of it's hisbodedus, but at the same time, we, Kenai and Hara, have a number of children, and there's so many different dynamics going on in the home, and so many different dynamics of, this one needs that, the other one needs this, and it's almost we're forced to get along. And I think there's something very, very profound about this, the fact that we're at home, and it could be at home, and those that are watching that are literally alone, or they're empty nesters or whatever it is. I mean, you should just know, like, we're all together as a bigger society and a bigger community. But those of us that have families and are at home, we're forced to get along with each other. And I think there's something very profound about that, especially here. I mean, I think we all live in Israel, and there's so many different fragments and so many different political systems, and there's so many different, and I think Hashem is basically saying to us, like, listen, can't you just make it work out? Just get along with this political party, get along with that political, it's easier said than done. Get along with your neighbor, get along with yourself, get along with, really on the inside, we're fragmented. And it goes really hand in hand with what Rabbi Katz is saying, Rabbi Doniel was saying, is like, you know, we are fragmented and we have to get along with ourselves, come to that inner dvekus and make that minion, that number 10, which is our 10 powers of our soul. The Frierdiker Rebbe says from his grandfather, maternal grandfather, that tzibor, making a minion, is not just external, making a minion with 10 people and just praying, but making a minion with your own inner 10 spheres and bringing them all together and being focused and unified with them. That's really
translating. A minion means it's a group of
Don't
10
say
men.
quorum. Who knows quorum?
And a minimum number of.
It's like translating tefillin as phylacteries. Like who knows?
I know it's not. It's not like, well, no, not quite. No, nothing is like translating tefillin as phylacteries. But so the idea, there are 10 powers, 10 core powers of the soul, 10 divine emanations in God, and there's 10. 10 is a very core number in Kabbalah and in the structure of the universe. So that's the idea that's being expressed here, that you can have a group of 10 people who are obligated to do the prayers in this group. That's the minimum number that forms the group. But you can also have the 10 powers of your soul as a group that become one higher order entity, one superstructure, so to speak. Go ahead.
So
Respond to Rabbi. Are we finished, Rabbi?
No, I was just doing my translation.
Yes, no,
serving the audience.
Sorry, Yehudit, if you don't mind, and then I want to hear, like, because there's the feminine aspect over here, which I'd love to hear yours and Shifra Chana's take on it. So it says there's an unbelievable Pirush explanation of the Baal HaTurim, who was the famous commentator on the Torah on Parshas Bo, that on the verse that says regarding the 10th plague, Makas Bechoros, the death of the firstborn, that the Hebrews were confined to their homes. And so the Baal HaTurim, this goes back 600 years ago, I believe, writes in his commentary, and so shall, it was like this in the first redemption, and it will be like this in the last redemption. It's an unbelievable, I mean, you could look it up. The Baal HaTurim prophesies is almost like we are going to be confined, and it's going to be like that in the last redemption. And I was thinking about this commentary, and I was like, why? Like, what does it have to do with anything? Why do we have to be confined in the home? And it occurred to me that what does a home really mean? The Talmud says, who is a home? The wife is the home. The Beisayu says that the man was, go ask advice, ask the Beisayu, ask your home. What do you mean ask your home? Ask your wife, because the wife is the home. And the idea is that we're almost forced to go into the feminine space of acceptance, of going into, because the geula, the redemption, is going to be a form of feminine redemption, which is all-inclusive, which is including all aspects, all particles, all individuals are going to be interunited in some incredibly unique tapestry that only mothers could do. Only women could really have that ability of interconnecting in that way. And so, in a sense, I was thinking about this. We're forced to go into the home. We're forced to go into this aspect of relinquishing our egos, where men are like, hey, I'm going to go to work, a wife, I'm going to come back and bring the bread, right? Bring the cholent home, and like, there's a certain.
I think the term is bacon, but I prefer what you chose. I think that was the better option.
That's right.
Rabbi Katz, you.
No, I didn't say bacon. I was just referring to it's a Kabbalistic thing. I'll tell you later.
It's like.
Bachon, it's a bechia, it's crying, it's a yearning.
There's the elevation at the end of the bacon is going to be kosher, right?
That too.
You see, he knew what I meant, Shifra.
There you go. He's going to show his paws. So we're forced to go into this state of mind of the feminine. And it says all redemptions came from the feminine. says, Af hema yubotanis, women are obligated to read the Megillah, women are obligated in the 4 cups. Women are, why is that? Because
of wine, 4 cups of wine.
Are wine, because women are predominantly spearheaded the redemption. Also, Hanukkah was the same thing. And so really the concept is that we're forced to go into this cocoon. And I was also thinking about this as well, that the Zohar says that there's a, in Parsha Ki Tetzeh, and in Tikkunei Zohar, talks about the Mashiach's dwelling, and it's called a nest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the nest Kan Tzipor, which is interesting, Kuf and Nun Sofit, there's a certain nest that the Zohar speaks about. I mean, there's very, very deep imagery over there in the Zohar, and Tikkunei Zohar goes into that. But there's the nest, and there's Mashiach is called this place of the nest that is hovering over the children and the you know the eggs and the etc.
This is all the Dira B'tach Toinim, right? I mean, the end. I'm translating. It's okay. Mid-sentence, Shifra. I'm just saying that the purpose of life and the goal, the definition of Geula, of redemption, is not just that we all get to chill out from the hard work. It's that we're making the world a dwelling place, a home, a mishkan ma'at, a vessel. You know, the bird is the Shechina, is the divine feminine presence, and the nest represents the place where she can come down and dwell. So all this imagery is because the ultimate destiny and destination we're all on is that we've transformed the world to not just a place that conceals Hashem, but a place that Hashem can come and dwell, nest, which really means to be revealed, to be megala, to be fully expressed even in the physical realm. So all these ideas of a house, a bias, and it's called the binyan of Nuk, of the feminine, right? It's the binyan of Malchus, of the feminine energy. So all of reality is about building the vessel so that Hashem can be revealed through it. So that's, even though I'm not a woman, I'm not qualified to make that comment from my little understanding of Torah. This is the consistent imagery in the Zohar and all these ideas is that's the end game, is that there is a feminine, that the Klal Yisrael, all of humanity, are really the feminine, meaning we're moving to a place of being ultimate, receiving the highest blessing, the highest influx of the energy, and all our systems are aligned, and all of the world is aligned to fully receive it in the deepest sense. And that is the home, that is the nest, through which Hashem's feminine energy can come and dwell in the world.
I think there's also something else there, which Rabbi Amichai was saying, to what Rabbi Amichai was saying, is that also there's a very interesting teaching by Rav Tzadok where he talks about how, you know, there's the Torah of ink on parchment and there's the Torah of souls. You know, there's the idea that each one of our souls is connected to one of the letters or sub-letters of the Torah. And he actually says explicitly that the Torah of souls is the Torah that Hashem studies on his side of the Mechitza, so to speak. And he actually says that the Ikar Torah is the Torah of souls. And because it's so complex,
the most foundational Torah.
And because it's so complex and so radiant, we can't really it's just we don't have the kalim to be able to really read it and extract its teachings. And so we need a perush, and the Torah of ink on parchment is simply the perush to the Torah of souls. And so
explanation, we need an explanation. In other words, you're saying that the Torah that we are given, the one that's written on parchment that was given to Moses,
just the commentary.
Those words,
And
is
this is
to point to the truth about us, which is what God is seeking to reveal. That's how I hear you.
And as you were describing, like kind of what happens inside the home when everybody's there 24/7 and having to kind of deal, and you know, it's like forces everyone to just engage in the Torah of souls and to see what their Torah of ink on parchment is worth. Like, have they really gotten the commentary that they're able to really now translate it into the Ikar Torah, which is the Torah of souls, which I think the Torah of souls is also the feminine Torah. Women are engaged. They might not be at the Beit Midrash studying the Torah of ink on parchment, but they're very much involved in, you know, kind of understanding the soul, the needs, the talents, the whatever potentials of their brood, and so I think having everybody in the home dealing with each other is really forcing everyone to engage with the feminine Torah, which is the Torah of souls.
There are lots and lots of comments. I was going to say commentators, commentaries. A lot of comments from viewers and listeners, and I'm not getting through them all nearly fast enough. There are a few questions in there, but here's one that I just wanted to bring to everybody. There's quite a few comments on the rising feminine, and somebody mentioned that the Rebbe said that women were extra receptive to inner aspects of Torah. Definitely, the Rebbe said that women have more ability to learn the inner aspects of Torah even than men. Not that we're in a competition, but here's a question. I'd like just to have clarification on it because I think it's kind of key. Claudia writes, Mashiach, a feminine energy ruled by a man, how does that fit? Ruled by a man. Feminine energy world ruled by a man. So I think maybe we want to just take one moment out and define Mashiach, although Wednesday will be total focus on Mashiach. Just letting you know, you don't want to miss that one. Who wants to, anybody jump in to find Mashiach?
I'm happy to. I know, Sarah, you would have read the book on it, so I feel stupid to
it's okay.
interject on that. Do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
I'll give there's lots of complex things. The simplest answer I would give is that the final energy is the capacity to reveal Hashem. That means the feminine means the vessel is fully aligned to reveal. And that's what ultimately gives nafas ruach. Divine joy is that the ultimate source has now a full expression in the world. So it's the end of history. It's the receiving end. It's the sum accumulation. It's the goal. It's the receiver. It's the vessel. It's all these dimensions. But Mashiach is the leader within that, who's relative to us, is coming to enlighten us and show us the way. So, this is this is what I consider as the short answer to this question when I've been asked it before, is Mashiach. There's an idea in Kabbalah which is called Erechin, which is the idea of what is masculine and what is feminine is always relative. I would say the Kabbalistic law of relativity, right? If the person that gives over the source is the masculine and the person receives is, so to speak, the feminine, and doesn't just receive and takes it, but manifests the potential into dimensional expression and to full revelation. So let's say if I'm teaching a class, I'm the teacher and I'm teaching to a seminary and the women are receiving, right? So I'd say I'm the man and you're the women, relatively speaking, right? That's true. But then if a woman stands up who's heard the class and goes outside and gives it over to a man, right? What did the teacher said? So the woman is now giving over the core idea and the man is receiving it. So Kabbalistically, the dynamic between them is that which is the source and the initiator happens to be the woman. But Kabbalistically, they are, relatively speaking, the masculine initiating and giving over the core idea. And that which is receiving and containing and understanding and drawing that down is technically a man, but right now it's flipped over to having that feminine energy. So my understanding of Mashiach being a masculine represents, on a pshat basic level, is that he is summoning in the final revelation and transformation of the lower world and all the people within it to be, to maintain its vessel, but also be flooded with light. But relative to us, he's the leader. So he's the initiator of the feminine dimension, which is the masculine Sheba Nekeva, Sheba feminine. That would be my understanding of that on a simple level, relatively speaking.
So I would also add something to that, which is that I think that there's no question that Mashiach is going to be a couple, that the whole Messianic era, as it's we've
that blipped out. Sorry, Yehudit said,
people nervous,
as she said before, but she said she has no question that Mashiach will actually be a couple. I'm thinking about that a lot myself.
Because as the Ari describes that the kind of Messianic, when in his teachings about the 7 stages of feminine development, so stage 7, which is the Messianic stage, which he says has never been, but will characterize the Messianic time, is where the masculine and feminine meet, in his words, panim b'panim shaveh legamre, face to face and completely equal. Panim
The sun and the moon.
also panimiyut, which is inwardness. So it's core to core, face to face, and completely equal. So, it's like the primary shift that all the other, like it's going to be a time of bounty and no lack and no war and peace and all those kind of stuff. All those are effects of a more profound shift that is happening, that is producing the Messianic era, which is this shift in gender, really, in the meeting of masculine and feminine. And so it's just like the couplehood of the Messianic personage.
So, Yehudit, are we taking your statement as literal? Or are we taking your statement as representative of Kabbalistic dimension shifting? How should the audience interpret what you just said?
So what about Mashiach being a couple?
Are you actually bringing a radical new chiddush that there will actually be a couple who will be called Mashiach? Are you talking about the unifications of energies? I just wanted to go all the way with the statement.
I think that it will be a team.
She said yes.
Be a team of masculine.
I mean, everyone would assume that he's a halachic Jew, and therefore we would absolutely assume he would be married, right? I don't think there's any discussion there. So I'm just getting you to turn the volume up fully on your chiddush. Are you saying more than they're being married?
Chiddush is a new innovative thought coming from Torah.
Abraham and Sarah were one. They both taught together. They both brought, wisdom to divine the world, divine revelation. Are you saying along the same lines? You're saying something more radical than that?
Well, what do you mean more radical? What would be more radical?
What you just said. You just said Mashiach is a couple, so I want you to go over what that means.
Yeah.
You say, is it the woman behind the man or the woman with the man behind the scenes, or is it like actually two, I'm assuming, collective souls that work together that are both called
two
Mashiach?
great outstanding spiritual educators and masters working together?
Right. I think I think they'll both be active in whatever ways they're active. But it's the Balatanya is the one that actually even goes beyond that and just talks about how like a spring compressed and released, the feminine is actually going to supersede her starting point and become the mashpia to the masculine. I mean, you see it in other...
Rabbi Nachman discusses this dimension, because ultimately what is the fact that we give joy to Hashem by the final revelation means we are giving to Hashem. That old line in Jewish outreach is, there's nothing you give to Hashem. The answer is, there's a lot we give to Hashem. We help him fulfill his purpose in the world. So then in that dimension, the feminine, Hashem will become a receiver, and that we will initiate that as well. But I would still say that's...
There's aspects of Hashem beyond that. So, but in that, the Vav and
the woman becomes the crown of the husband. This is the idea that we say, right?
This is a Kabbalistic coffee clutch. This is what...
I think this got interesting as far as I could say.
No, it is. It's really interesting. That's what people are tracking.
Can we delete the first?
I mean, that's the problem here, is that we're talking to each other and we're not exactly talking to...
I think the audience is...
If you would read the comments, you'd see that the listeners are also talking to you. Then a lot of them seem to be quite learned. Here's just a random... If I may offer a thought, rabbis and rabbinites, the male destructiveness that's been more clearly expressed and defined in this last century, and specifically this last decade, which is still so much in power and ruining our world, may need to be healed by Mashiach's male energy. That's pretty interesting. There are a lot of really interesting thoughts here, and a lot of thank yous. How is meditation related to this women energy? Why does it work through images and colors? People are...
I'm just going to jump in for a second. I actually don't... I think the polarization of the destructive form of feminism to rise up against the male is a clipper cardinal free.
No, that's not what she said. She said
no, that's what I'm saying right now.
Energy.
That's what I'm saying right now. I'm talking about Mashiach. Again, I do not mean this in a literal way, but Mashiach is, and perhaps what I would define in this is what Sarah Yehudit means in her own way, like that. And we're kind of talking different ways. Mashiach to me is like, I'm going to say in a ridiculous reductionistic way, but a highly emotionally intelligent male, if you will, right? It means that there's a very, very deep integration of quote unquote masculine properties in a healthy way, and very, very deep integration of quote unquote feminine properties. I think the world of emotional intelligence is exploding, and mindfulness and consciousness and development, because what I've seen many times is when you have polarized men and unhealthy men on the spectrum, polarized women and unhealthy women on the spectrum, what they are actually is very unhealthy people. Right? But the more you show a person how to get that inner connection, that spiritual alignment, then they're less polarized as individuals. You know, the men can be emotionally intelligent, and you know, women can counterbalance that. So I think that humanity again moves through inner emotional health and spiritual alignment and meditation. I think we move into, I don't want to say trans, I'm going to use the word in a playful way, transsexual, trans duality. But what you enter into is a much more refined sense of the masculine and feminine, which is together in a beautiful relationship, but also more harmonized within the individual. And I sense that the inner work and spiritual development meditation, it facilitates and opens possibilities for that. And I believe that Mashiach is not going to walk in the world with a briefcase and say, okay, women, you know, shut up, sit down, I'm the man in charge. God forbid. We're talking about a very perfected being who's perfected their masculine and feminine dimension and harmonized that in a very profound way.
If I could make it maybe a little bit more simple also.
It's going to be a couple.
Mashiach is a collective soul. It's they're in each generation. There's a core soul that contains with this. This is a core concept, and that contains within that soul all of the sparks, like Adam contained all of the as cells in the body of Adam.
He's greater than Adam. He's the higher level of consciousness.
Yes, right? yes. But Mashiach is the ultimate core soul and contains all the souls of all peoples who ever lived as a part of his soul, and conversely or holographically, we also each contain at the core of our soul a piece of that soul, that collective soul. So it's like an encompassing all oneness, embodied in one body, but not separate, not a separate body. It's not ruling, like the idea of Mashiach. Mashiach is a melech, which is a king who rules by virtue of the love and loyalty between the king and the subjects of the king. It's a oneness. It's not a moshel. It's not a dictator. It's not a boss.
Yeah, I feel we're in a world of duality, and we're trying to understand a figure who comes from the world of unity, and we're kind of
but I just want to finish this one simple. The one simple thought is that Mashiach is like Rabbi Katz was saying, Mashiach is feminine in the sense that Mashiach is receiving from God. Mashiach is completely open and transparent to receiving from God. There's nothing of Mashiach's own being that interrupts that flow. So that's an ultimate feminine in the paradigm of masculine and feminine, which is not just, it just happens to be that it came down and is enclosed in actual people, genders of physical beings, but entire place, this paradigm, masculine and feminine, giving and receiving, like was said here. So Mashiach receives and then gives, just like Moshe Rabbeinu in his time and his generation received. He was the ultimate receiver, and so he was the ultimate giver. And so too, by the way, that's the messianic attribute of all of us, to the degree that we can receive, and maybe that brings in meditation, consciousness, co-creation. To the degree that we can receive, that's the degree to which we can give and add our own leadership into the picture. I guess that's what I wanted to say. And I don't want to interrupt any of these conversations. So just keep going wherever you're going, but I'm going to add one question. And somebody asked this question, but I had it myself. And that is, and this is a question, this is my real question, like not just now. I have this question, I woke up with this question, I go to sleep with this, I went to sleep with this question. And it's not just today. And that is like, we should, forgive my words, but understand my spirit, please. But based on everything I understand, learn, know, believe, read, internalize from my sources, we should be able to reach that place where we can co-create, where we can end illness. I mean, where we can actually turn, why shouldn't the virus hit people and make them well? Even the transposition of the letters, we know, Kabbalistically that the things are created, the world is, everything that exists is created through the letters in the Hebrew language, which are divine channels of creative energy. And if you move the order of the letters, what's created is totally different, like nega and oneg, for example, in letters. So in this idea of going up, like a couple of people spoke, or maybe you, or Doniel spoke about bringing up the illness to the source, and then bringing down the I don't remember if this is exactly how you phrase it, bringing down the light, bringing down something new, bringing down that new divine energy that heals. So like, where are we still, not talking about people who don't get involved or people who aren't working, but as a collective, let's talk about innovators. Let's talk about believers, Torah-based innovators, teachers, learners, teachers. You know, we're really attempting to not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. So where are we still falling short in our ability to connect, you know, vertically, to connect high enough to bring ourselves up to that awareness and why are we not fully able to
We're
bring
not
down?
connecting the experiential work.
I'm sorry, what? I didn't hear you.
We're not doing the experiential work.
Are you not doing the experiential work? I feel I'm doing experiential work.
I do not believe that's the mainstream Torah that is taught today.
I'm not talking about mainstream.
You're talking about just us four right now?
Well, and it's not only us four, but I'm saying whoever's in that, there are many more than four, and it doesn't have to be people who are, you know, in front of a camera, but there are lots and lots of people who are reaching up in a very sincere way and reaching in a very sincere way.
So I'd like to share something.
None of us is, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Okay, so first of all, regarding like the male-female dynamic, it's very important to know that there's two, personalities that are epitomized by the realm of Malchus, because we know that there's the Avos, forefathers of the Merkava. So we've got Abraham is the chariot, is the channel of kindness, and Isaac, etc. Well, who's the chariot of Malchus, of kingship? And so who's the Malchus of kingship? It is two. Actually, we have two channels. And that's the acronym for the month of Iyar is Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. And then who do we have? Rachel. So Rachel epitomizes Malchut, but then we ultimately have King David, who is also a feminine soul in a sense. And what's interesting is that actually Malchus, Kabbalistically, is a feminine sphera, and it sweetens all of the other higher sphirot, the higher channels, including the channel of Gevura, which is Isaac, which Isaac is actually a feminine soul. It says that Isaac left his body, and the whole actually left column on the spherotic tree goes upwards, because the whole idea of the feminine is to ascend upwards, to uplift the physicality. And Isaac is the one that really lifts it up. Well, he died by the whole story of the Akedah, etc., the sacrifice of Abraham, of Isaac. So what I wanted to say is that there's this aspect of duality, essentially, that we've got King David and Rachel that are really together representing Malchus. So regarding that question that you were asking now, I think, how could we co-create, and how do we experience, like Doniel was saying, all of us together, and in the Jewish world, and this is something which I think about all the time, you know, going to whatever. We don't have to elaborate on the negative of what's going on, but how could we co-create? Well, last night we had a class. We have a course, the 10-sphere course, the tools applied, and we had a class on the sphere of Netzach. We really delved into the idea of Netzach, and so Netzach is really connected to mortality. Well, there's something really powerful about dealing with our mortality. When we deal with our mortality, which is what's happening over here globally for all of us, we're freaked out. We're in panic mode, potentially anxious, and we could go into insanity, or we could dig deeper and figure out what is life about. Because when we know, if we only figure out what life is when, unfortunately, there's death. Death, actually, when we almost die in a certain way, is the only way that we could only really find life. And we could only find life and find our purpose as individuals, first of all, because it comes really as on the experiential level first. We can't say you experience it first, you experience it first. We experience it in our own homes, in our own mind frames, in our own selves. And then we find out this is what life is all about. This is what living really means as humanity. This is what Adam was meant to be. Adam el Elyon. I was meant to resemble the divine, rise up from the Adama, from the material, from the earthly self, from the desires, from the instincts, from the animal soul, egocentric consciousness, to rise up to the higher levels of consciousness, which is Adam el Elyon. So we're facing our mortality, which is really connected to Netzach, because then that breeds courage. That breeds a very strong sense of willpower. And Sarah Yehudit, when you were talking about Nevuah and Ruach HaKodesh and all that, well, according to Kabbalah, Nevuah actually stems in Netzach.
Nevuah being prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh being divine inspiration.
Divine inspiration, yes. So Nevuah actually is rooted. There's two ways of viewing Netzach and Hod, the right thigh and the left thigh, or it is the kidneys, the two kidneys, which are very important, which within the kidneys is a seat of intuition, is the seat of like a very, very deep awareness that we could tap into. And that awareness is the awareness of prophecy, and perhaps even higher than that. Ruach HaKodesh, I haven't seen that brought down, but we're tapping into, and all the prophets say this. Isaiah is brought down in Isaiah, it's brought down in that your children, in the book of Amichai, said your children are going to be prophesied very, very soon. We're going to see little kids walking in the streets talking prophecy. You know, the spirit of Hashem is going to spill over you and over all of humanity. And so why and how? Because we're really going to dig so deep and dig into that aspect of what is our purpose, because our purpose is living, our purpose is life, and we could only find out what life is when we're facing death.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that because we have to go beyond the surface when we're facing death?
Well, we have to, because right now there's a choice. There's a choice of panicking, being in anxiety mode, of being depressed. I mean, that's one alternative. Or the alternative is, what is life about? What is life worth living? What is the purpose of life? And then it's a conscious choosing that we have to make. We have to choose to really live life. And what does life really mean? And that's the question that everyone is asking, is life going out on my yacht? I can't go on my yacht anymore. I can't go out. I can't go to restaurants. All my money, well, a third of it is gone, you know, with the stock crashes and everything. So what is my life all about? What is life about? That's the question that everyone is asking. Like, what is going on? I thought that life is the basketball game or the football game, the Jets. There's no football, there's no basketball, there's no theater. There's just you in your house. There's just you within yourself. There's only you and finding out your purpose. And then that's really living life, finally living life.
Interesting.
True. Go ahead. Sorry, Yehudit.
Well, just because I wanted to kind of address your question maybe from a different angle, which is that, you know, kind of Adam and Chava contain the souls of all humanity, i.e. us, and we all gave consensus to that decision to eat, and we all suffered the shattering consequences of it. And so we ate from the Eitz HaDa'at, Tofara, Da'at, and so it's Da'at that shattered, and it's Da'at that we really are needing to repair. And that is that's the existential chasm, so to speak, between the head and the heart. And but as Leshem talks about it, like kind of I don't know if you can see this diagram, kind of, it represents
Kind of.
Adam and Chava and Gan Eden before the Chet and after, with the fall.
Adam and Eve before the sin and after.
Yeah. And so here you see that whatever is like the gray is basically us, where we are now and where that was then. And anything that's inside its parameters was affected by was experienced the kind of shattering or fracturing consequences of the sin, so to speak.
Could you hold it up a little higher? Hold the picture up a little. Okay. So this gray on. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And so when everything fell, so now all this that was inside was affected by the Chet, but now we're down here, and whatever tshuva we do, we can't yet reach those levels that were broken. And so there is, like, we, no matter how hard we try at this point, we're not able to, like, overcome death. Like, we can't, like, as soon as, like, that's the problem with sin and tshuva, is that in the wrong action, you damage whatever aspects of soul are kind of inside the personality. But in the fall, you now fall, and you are only able to repair those aspects of soul that now remain within the personality, even though there are kind of levels above that are going to still need repair and are kind of impacting and creating, you might say, a glass ceiling in terms of how, no matter how hard we try, no matter how hard we roll up our sleeves and do our inner work and our outer work, we still can't seem to kind of heal illness to the degree that we can transcend, that we can reverse the consequences of the Eitz Hadat and be free of death.
And is that it for you? Like, are you, I'm not happy with that answer. No, that's really interesting. It's fascinating, but do you think there's no way? Like, that seems kind of fatalistic. Should there not be some way? Is there no way? Like, what's the stance? What's the stance from this level that we're all connecting to, yearning to connect to? How far should we be able to go?
Well, we're aiming, like, that's all we're doing. And at some point we'll get there. But, we do have to understand that there's, like, the repair is huge, and we're doing the best we can do, and we're going to get there eventually. But that is why we try as we might at this point in time. We can't seem to master healing to the degree that we are able to reverse death or transcend death.
That's true. If you look at it if you're looking back, we could definitely say without a doubt that we have not yet manifested or mastered it. But if we're ahead, it seems to me that we shouldn't necessarily assume that means that we can't in the next moment. Just like, in a way, just like because Mashiach is not, the Gil is not fully here, Mashiach is not fully come or whatever till now, we're taught that at any moment it can happen, and it's not even dependent on, if we believe that it was dependent on all of us doing all rectifications, so forget it. You can't even do that in such a broken world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I don't know this. I guess I choose to believe it, and I definitely aim for it. And hey, even if we can't yet end death, we can certainly often stop an illness or shift something, or create new circumstances, co-create new circumstances. I wonder, do we need to have that ceiling? And what does that say about all the different incarnations that we've been through, and the fact that we're working together with with higher realms also. It's not that we're working alone. Mashiach is also working, from beneath the surface, and so do all the tzaddikim and all the previous generations. Anyway, just my...
Right, but the proof is in the pudding. I mean, that's kind of
till now.
Right, and we have to repair. I mean, the somehow we're still in mochin de katnut. Like, what's the difference between mochin de katnut, small-minded, narrow, childish consciousness versus mochin de gadlut, broad, expanded, mature consciousness, is really the happens in da'at. It's the repair of da'at, and it ultimately comes down to the capacity to bear paradox. Like, we're still in mochin de katnut, and we can't really hold paradox, and so that's, I think, the limiting factor in terms of our growth path.
I mean, facing death definitely forces you to hold paradox, whether it's your own or someone else's. But I guess there are many levels.
Right.
Anyone else want to?
I think it's a balance of what we could reach in terms of our consciousness as a humanity, as a people, and I'd love to get Rav Doniel's thoughts on that. But I also think that it is there's a balance there, because it says by the Exodus that the people were not even ready to go out. We read this in the Haggadah. That aron ve'eria, that you were barren and naked, and the commentaries say naked from the mitzvot. And so God gave the Jewish people 2 mitzvot, the blood, right? And that's the blood of the Paschal lamb and the blood of the circumcision. And God saw the blood, that you were sulking in the blood, in your blood you will live, in your blood you will live. And the commentator over there, Rashi, quotes Matya ben Harash, and the Midrash says Raiti eto din ba, that there's already the time of desire up above, that God desired to redeem the people out of Egypt. And they were just not ready. What should they do? So what did God do? He gave them the mitzvot in order to give them at least this minimal level of connection. And so the Lubavitcher Rebbe brings this down, this midrash and this Rashi, regarding the importance of inspiring other Jews and non-Jews to fulfill certain mitzvot, certain like, for example, putting on tefillin or lighting Shabbat candles. And although could we say that they've reached their max, they've reached their highest conscious level? No, probably not. But at least it put them in some trajectory, some level that they're almost bouncing. They have the ability. They have a will to want something, and that's already something. And so I think it's important to for us to think about the balance that on the one hand, I mean, we're in such a confusing time, such a we could say dark place in not outside of us. Outside of us, I mean, technically, I mean, we have everything. You go to the stores, everything's there. Like, thank God, everything's there. It should stay that way, right? But inside of us, it's just, there's such a confusion. And it's this balance. It's this balance of, at least we want to be somewhere, and then we've got to get there. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, of Doniel, Sarah, Yehudit.
I wanted to say
Shifra.
something.
Yeah.
Is that also, though, like, kind of in that longing, there is also a place that kind of wants Mashiach now, and there's also this place, the bread of shame place, that is like, we don't want it if we haven't earned it. And so there is, in our psyche, there are these two pushes and pulls, and this final redemption, you know, I do think that, oops, I pulled out my cord. You know, right, I think we have this conflicted will, in terms of knowing that the eternity of eternally deepening consummation, union and reunion with Hashem, it is only meaningful if we're really able to meet Hashem. which means that we have to grow into that role, and we have to kind of build it through our efforts. And so, like Shifra said, I think that we want it, and we there's a place inside of us that bread of shame doesn't want it if we haven't really earned it,
Yeah. And God is almost like not fixing it for us. It's like, okay, you guys deal with it. Stop being kids. Stop being so like,
Right.
deal with
Right.
it. Like, find it.
Right.
What does that mean? What does that mean to you specifically? Because I know a lot of people could interpret to mean that everybody has to be, on a far more conscious, perfected level, and being kind to each other and getting over the differences and getting over polarity. Then you could say it means full observance of Torah. Then you could say that it means mochin to godless. Does it really mean that everybody has to reach mochin to godless in order for that? It's like I hope I don't mean to be oppositional at all. This is just my most burning question in life. But which honestly asking to Hashem also, like first of all, the Rebbe said that in terms of bringing Mashiach, that we have to make it happen now, and that there'll be 10 stubborn people who will not give up until they, prevail upon Hashem to make it happen. Maybe 1 or 2 or 3 who know what needs to be done and how it should be done. It doesn't seem like, there was one Nafshim ben Aminadab one to the sea until the sea split. And then it's for everybody. I'm like, to me, this is not conceptual, although conceptual always helps. Conceptual is our framework, but so if we have to rectify our consciousness, and there's part of us that we still resists Geula, which I don't like to think, maybe that's the rectification that needs to take place. Maybe the fact that we're wed to this endless self-perfection, self-growth is the out of alignment in consciousness. I don't know.
I don't know if I'm permitted to say, but just to say in the most brief way, that's what the Baal Shem Tov says. He says it explicitly.
But says exactly.
He says,
what does he?
The Messiah and the Mashiach will come when the whole world is able to do Yehudim and Aliyahs, to expand their consciousness to a state of godless, to expand the consciousness, to ascend in the spiritual worlds, to unify the worlds in the same way the Baal Shem Tov can do. This is what the Vilna Gaon says explicitly, that at the time before the end of days, there will be 7 particular signs that indicate when the final times, and rapid emotional healing and acceleration of spiritual abilities,
that we already have.
We don't really have that. We see the birth of that happening in a radical way, but we don't see that everybody is really doing that yet. So this is, again, don't want to overstep my boundaries, but I'm just saying that is very clearly the Baal Shem Tov's approach to that. Is that
and it says at first he was disheartened, and then somehow.
Yeah, by the way, he was a Chabadnik. He was like, no. He's taken aback.
Right.
He's really, right. He literally basically says that will take forever. He's shocked by that. Right. And they actually say to him, what's their response? They comfort him and say, I'm going to give you secret tools, which are going to astonishingly allow people to
give us coronavirus.
Well, I don't know. He's not talking coronavirus, but that's certainly a jump start that we should find those tools. It's kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark. We have to go find the maps. We have to uncover the treasures. But that's what it says. It's what it says.
Right.
The cover.
So my mashpia, his name is Rabbi Schneider Zalman Gaffney, a very prominent chassid. So I actually asked him, this question: what does that mean? And he said that the Alter Rebbe in Shara Yichud ve'Emunah, which is Yehudim, he placed the inyan of Yehudim in there. And so the inyan of Yehudim, the idea of
unifications,
divine unifications, are already accessible through not just the study, obviously, but the implementation of that specific portion of Tanya, Shar Yichud Ve'Emunah, which is a very, very deep. It's all meditated. I mean, it's like when you just really delve into those chapters, 12 chapters. It's profoundly.
That's a very, very beautiful and profound thing to say, but it's not pshat. It's not pshat. It's beautiful and profound and extraordinary. And next time I read that in the Chazara, I'm definitely going to hold that about it as an extraordinary. But it's not pshat. And the Baal Shem Tov doesn't respond to that as pshat there, which just opens up a world of possibility. You know, I'm going to ride the Vilna. Listen, if the Vilna Gaon, the Baal Shem Tov agree on something, as far as I'm concerned, that's a good sign. The Leshem agrees and the Zohars agree. There's many Kitveris that agree, and the many the original Chassidim Rishonim, as I call them, the Chassidic masters agree. But to put it simply, you know, Be'ita Achishena, as the Zohar says, that there will come a time, and when Hashem, you know, exponentially turns up the revelation of divine wisdom. And to be clear, this is an extension of something called the Torah Chadasha, you know, which is the revelation of the panemius of Torah and the secrets of Torah. But that doesn't only mean intellectual. It means that we become divine beings. We enter into, very clear as the Baal Shem Tov, and this really was the truth of Chassidus. The true definition of Chassidus was to reveal, to kickstart the Torah Chadasha, the final revelation of Torah, which is both the mystical teachings, but absolutely to take all the potato farmers along into the experiential, transformational teachings of reality. And the Baal Shem Tov says, we're going all the way till everybody can do this. And I just want to say simply, we're all discussing, we're exploring, we're excited about the possibilities, we're exploring together different things. The Baal Shem Tov says, is really shot on that page, is that the experiential teachings that the Baal Shem Tov can do will go out to everyone in the world. So this is what I see, you know, the awakening of mindfulness, the awakening of, you know, breath work, the awakening of all these, the fact that science now today will say, yes, our emotions do trigger our physical issues. And if we're suffering from physical health, then we have to attack on that. And the fact that people do these modalities, and even scientists, they get blown into transcendent experiences and they open up to real Yehudim, that's showing that this is unleashing. And this, for me, answers the deeper part of Shifra Chana's question, which is this yearning that people doing this work have, that that we should, with our minds, really be able to heal someone on the spot. We should, with our minds, really be able to transform miracles. And all this, what I'm talking about, Rabbi Nachman says explicitly the law of attraction we have with our mind, if we clearly, you know, eliminate the noise in our mind and focus our attention on something to really make that happen literally right now. And this is in the Zohar, it's explicit in many different places.
Many sources, right?
I believe, you know, on a very basic level, this is, I see also the masculine feminine paradigm. It used to be that this was something only the tzaddikim, the great spiritual masters, can do, right? And that's the masculine model, right? It's for those few individuals, and it's not something we all have access to. And this is explicitly in many, many sources, that at the end of days, we will all be given access to it. And when the Baal Shem Tov stood up, there were many Talmidei Chacham and wise people that said, you know, you're basically giving free access to the highest revelation to the potato farmers. Eza chutzpah, who do you think you are? And that was the core of his message. This Torah and these revelations, these supernatural gifts are shaykh to them, they're fitting to them, and it's the beginning. And we know that of Aaron Levi of Strashelia said that at the final generation, he had a Masorah from his Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe is right, the founding spiritual master of Chabad, who got it from the Maggid, who got it from the Baal Shem Tov. That at the end of the day, even the simple person will have a part of a tzaddik within their soul, and will have all the dimensions all intertwined together. And the core of it is that these tools are coming back. They're coming back in the secular world, the lower waters, and they're coming back in Torah, in Kabbalah, in Chassidus, and they're coming back, but they're not being, two things I want to say answer the question. We're still not taking them fully seriously. And I say that even to people like myself and people involved with that. Hold in mind, in the times where even the Tzaddikim gave all of their lives and nothing else but to master those spiritual abilities. They weren't also involved in, you know, Kiruv V'choikim and going to campuses. They weren't also online on Facebook. They weren't also in the broken parts of our generation with the fears and doubts and pain. And there was this thing called schools of prophecy. I mean, we know that there's over 1 million people in schools of prophecy. It was taken very seriously. Like any craft, if you go to see in India, in Chinese schools of martial arts, the kids are in them and they're learning and they're studying and they're mastering tradition. The two things I would say is, we are not taking the system and in a truly dedicated way to step into that in a truly, we pick up bits and pieces, we even go to a retreat or a seminar, but we're not entering into an immersive or creating immersive environments where people study for months and years in experiential techniques. I've even seen my own personal development, and I'm very bad at this stuff, even though I teach this stuff, just what I'm able to do today that I couldn't do 6 months ago, that I couldn't do 5 years ago, to the ongoing practice, the ongoing discipline to refine the sensitivities like any craft. We don't take the craft seriously of spiritual development in a way that we're 150% dedicated. Just like, you know, any martial arts expert, they didn't practice on weekends and go to Sunday school for martial arts. They gave their heart and soul and mastered that. That's one. The other thing that the Tzaddikim say is there's a lot of tum in the air today. You know yourselves, right? Chabad fans, that I've heard this story many times, when the Rabbi got to New York and he made all the Hasidim stand on the street corners and go through Sefer Tehillim, right? Because they need to purify the Avirah. Today, without going into all the complex Torahs it discusses, I just gave like 8 hours of this for a group we have online, but we are both very low souls, which are highly broken, right? Where the reincarnation, every time you reincarnate, all the things that you've fixed and you've worked through actually goes up. And who we are more and more is the smaller souls left of our brokenness. At the same time, that's the Yehudit Adoros, that the further you get away from revelation, the smaller we are. But at the same time, the spiritual masters teach us, the Tzaddikim teach us, we're the Or Choizev from the light of Mashiach. That means we have unique powers and gifts that didn't exist in any generation. And therefore, what we have to do to access that is take the craft seriously in a way that until we set up those schools, Shifra Chana, we're expecting you to set up these schools, and until we really bring those teaching back and go mainstream to the experience A, but we also have to purify the Avirah. We need the feminine, the lower, the simple people like me, like us, to start pushing that so much. Start in the same way that Chabad Hasidus took Hasidus across America. You know, Rabbi Nachman in Breslov Hasidus, they're pushing it out today. They're introducing those teachings. We have to start getting our people practicing at a very powerful level these experiences, to start purifying the energy in the air, to start opening up new channels and giving a vessel to create that influx. And I believe that even though we're starting to see the warming up of that, I believe that in the next 10 to 15 years that will go more and more mainstream even within the Torah world. And I believe—
God forbid it should be, God forbid it should be—
I'm sorry, I forgot who I was speaking to. When Mashiach gets here, he would have said, if I didn't come, it would have taken you at least 15 years to get there. And we'll say, Chazdei Hashem, mamish. But you know, in that model, in that way of understanding the linear, non-miraculous approach, we're opening up Sinovat, we're opening up pipelines, we're opening up channels, we're purifying the air, we're bringing these Torahs down, we're making them more mainstream. And the more you take something which is a kol damamadaka, right, a very subtle voice, and you make it mainstream, a very subtle talent, and you embody it, and you teach it to others, then what actually happens is there's new things come. As Rabbi Nachman says, when you bring that makif down to the panimi, you bring a potential light into integrated, then new makif and new lights come, new channels come, new opportunities come. I believe anyone that can't fall asleep at night, Shifra Chana, gives you trouble by this. That's because Hashem, it's a makif, it's the angel that's patching the grass, say, grow, grow, do it, push us all forward to open up these possibilities. I believe, from my understanding of the Baal Shem Tov, that's going to be the next level, because he wants us all in that Mokum de Gadlus, all in that expanded consciousness. And when we get to certain thresholds, the Tzaddikim say, I believe the specific tools that he said will come out will be the Mak of a Patish. I believe they're going to come through. God willing, tonight, and then tomorrow morning, Mashiach will say what took you all night. But it'll be that idea that he will then tip us over to lift everybody up through that.
So I agree, 100% in terms of these the Baal Shem Tov really saw that for us. But my take on it is that I think that not everyone is on that level. And so about a month and a half ago, I was in the airport, and I just, I had some time. And so I checked out the book section, and there was a very interesting book there, How to Change Your Mind, which was a bestseller, 2018 bestseller of the year in the New York Times. And it was all about psychedelics. And I was like,
Oh, that's a fun
We
subject.
talked about this last time.
okay. I was like, that's interesting. And it's a big, thick book and really well written. And this guy, he was a Jewish guy, Michael Pollan, and he talks about his trips basically. And
He's the head
a lot
of
of the
maps.
science.
Is that Michael Pollan?
The head of what?
Yes. Yeah.
The maps, the research institute to doing the research to mainstream this. Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, fascinating stuff. But he talks about the experience and about how people are turning to this in a really, there's a second revolution now. There was a revolution in the 60s, and now people are turning to this. The Rebbe was asked in the 60s, you know, is this a valid way of reaching God, right? There's a letter from Simon Jacobson that I saw, you know, that he also addressed as someone that says, hey, I want to reach God by these modalities. So he tells them, although you've gone through these modalities, that's not the optimal way of reaching God. I mean, I could say I've never officially done that, so I don't know what it's like.
But unofficially?
I find it, no, not officially either. No, I'm serious. I'm serious.
Rabbi, nobody's listening anyway. Everyone's gone to check out the game. Tell us, go on.
But I know a lot of people that have, and I find it fascinating. And I think that my point is really that people are searching for that deeper consciousness. And that's why there's that second revolution, which is going on right now. And my take on it, and I'm involved in Kiruv, you know, and for a number of years over here in Tzfat, and before that's
Torah education,
you know, in Florida.
Jewish outreach.
Yeah, and so you could have someone that's coming to you, and then they all of a sudden they get it, and these people just get it, and you're like, what? You know, this person that's in synagogue or kollel all day long, they're like, knock knock, hello, are you like,
Yeah, right.
like, are you human? Like, what's going on there, dude? You know, you try to like understand, and there's a certain openness. So what I'm trying to say
Because
is
they've been there, they've experienced that unity, they've experienced that transcendence. They know what leaving the body feels like. They know what it means to be surrounded by an infinite light. When they read chapter 18, 19 of the Time, they're like, been there, done that. And they're like, no, that was bugs. No, that was just Buddhist meditation. But it's a mitzvah, it's a reality of consciousness.
Exactly.
Whether it's ideal as a secondary point, but the fact that they have reference point opens up worlds.
Yes, and when you share with them, okay, or when they hear, because it's not us sharing, it's like when they actually discover that kernel of light and that kernel of Hasidus, or that kernel of deep point, it elicits something so great. There's no other word but Yehudim. There's a deep unification, which is going on within that individual, and there's that level of tshuva, that return, which is so incredible. And so I feel that the spreading of Hasidus, the spreading of the well springs outwards,
needs to be done with drugs. Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm saying that I feel like this is a reality.
You buy, we'll try.
This is a reality which is out there in the world outside.
So Rabbi, I see and I raise you, and I totally agree. Again, I don't think anyone here is suggesting people do that. And we've had this discussion before, and there's a lot of complex nuance there. But I want to say, people who have had that experience, I've met people who have been psychologically destroyed by that multiple people, and it fragments some people and elevates some people. I don't think it's the responsible ideal, but the simple addition I want to make in resonance with what you're saying is, when people have had profound experience in psilocybin, MS, LSD, all these kind of things, there's a reference point that they deeply understand what it says in the books. Number one, when we run elevation seminars and retreats all around the world, and we have 7-day, 3-day, 10-day meditation experiences without drugs, and you show people like literally what it says in Hasidus, literally what it says in the Kabbalah, just do this with your mind, just do this. And then they pop into that state as well. Confession, I was 23 years old. I first did that on a Vipassana meditation retreat. Right? All you had to do is watch your body, scan your body. After day 4 or 5, out of my body, united with the unity of all things. And I looked in those books when my rabbis were giving it over, said, I've been there. They said, what do you think, you're a tzaddik? I don't think I'm a tzaddik. I've experienced that. I know in my kishkas, in my body, in my bones, what that is. And that opens up worlds. So what I'm seeing is that Hashem is opening up good channels and bad channels and high channels and low channels, but he's opening up channels.
We don't understand the channels.
We don't understand how and why, and there's dangers and there's risks. But when you open up, and I mean this jokingly, mostly jokingly, a stark litvak, someone who's very against these things, and you give them a transcendent experience, literally straight out of Shulchan Aruch, his pashtus of Gashmias, transcendence, out of their body, they start speaking like Hasidic masters. They speak in the language of, wow, it's a world of freedom. Oh, that's called Am V'Cheres. Yes, I understand. Right? I felt unified and one with everything. Oh, Hashem Echad. Right? So if we can give people a taste of that, and the faster we get to the place, and faster we show them this is what is in our sources, I believe then we're on the path to Elias and Yehudim. And the faster the gift of the Balei Tshuva, the gift of the newly religious, is when we have these reference points, I think we're able to mine much deeper and with much more profound depth, all these mystical texts and much more easily unload, unwrap, unpack. I got there, third time's the charm, the teachings and understand the experiential reference points. And I think that's part of the upper waters and the lower waters, as the Zohar says, uniting us together. When you know the experience and you see it in the books, then you can draw those things out of the books and you can mainstream them to our people in the world. And I think that's a lot of what's happening now.
Yeah, because it is experiential at the end of the day. Torah is experiential. Life is experiential, and that's it's like it's not cerebral,
Right.
but that's where the balance is. Where does it start from? And in Chabad Hasidus, it starts off with Chochma Bina Das, but then it's Avoda. It's about drawing it down into the heart, drawing it down into Avoda, drawing it down into the experiential realm, and that's the way it's supposed to be. And whether that's what we see or not externally, I mean, that's not what's in the books. I always say there's the books and there's the looks, there's the external, and then there is really what it's supposed to be like. And so that's what we're supposed to get to, that experiential level.
Right. So Shifra, Chana, what are you studying at School of Prophecy? Oh, you are studying online. Is that what you were doing?
Prophecy. I mean, I started a school. I was just open registration, School of Spiritual Empowerment.
There you go.
It's prophecy. I mean, I don't call it prophecy, but
That's the end game.
Here's the thing, and then I want to read a comment from a listener. To me, I'm hearing everything everyone's saying, and I'm, in two places at once. Like, on the one hand, I'm questioning myself. I rely totally on the words of the Rebbe. That's just the fact of matter. That's what it is to be a chassid, and it's not because I don't do it because I'm supposed to do it as a chassid. That's what of the soul to the Rebbe, and that's the channel for reality. That's why I'm observant. I have my mystical story. I don't know if anybody here has read it, but it's written in books. And I was an atheist, or was heavily agnostic before I got hit with a spiritual experience, and then found out that was based on a promise that the Rebbe's father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, made to my grandfather in 1947, before my parents were married, that he promised, that our souls would come back to whatever. It's very, and the way it happened, it's a very powerful story. Actually, if anybody wants to read it, Google my name, Shifra, Hendrie, and the tapestry. The tapestry, as I wrote it up.
I'll read it.
But that's makif. Makif means a light that's not internalized, but it's very powerful. It's much more powerful, but it's not internalized. So I had, in one fell swoop, I had an awareness of something far higher than me that just was, in so many levels, blew me out of the water. Like, it was life changing and to such an extreme degree. And that started my journey into Torah. And I guess I'm trying to catch up with it, but that's the relationship between, that's my relationship with the Rebbe. Like, the Rebbe acquired me, and there's no question about it. And while I realize that there's, I'm missing I would love to learn from all of you and many more teachers who have more broad exposure. I have extremely deep exposure. in my own path. And the other place I have exposure is I was involved with energy healing. I still am, but I was involved with that. I used to have a telesummit interview series where I interviewed some innovators in energy healing in the world. And, I interviewed astronaut Ed Mitchell, who had this experience of unified consciousness as he was orbiting the moon, looking down at Earth. And, these things are very real to me. And I have, not only as a client or receiver, but as a practitioner, I don't do it professionally, but it's in all my work. I, have experienced changing blood work, from a distance, like shifting, like a lot of shifts in reality through, prayer is definitely a big factor, but seeing these things, what I'm trying to say is seeing these things being real and possible, combined with the things that I learned from the Rebbe's Chassidus, which I'm sure, there's a hishtalshlus, right? Now I'm using Hebrew. There's a chaining down. There's a kind of a dynastic process that starts with, Abraham, or really starts with Adam, really starts before Adam, and it comes down and, presumably, though there's this lowering of the level of humanity, there is also the raising of the level, as was discussed. But basically the idea is that the leadership, as you said yourself, Rav Doniel, that Mashiach is on a far higher level even than Moshe, than Moses. So there's this, right. So there's this raising. So we would have, not meant at all like this, like the question for me is so real, and it's not gonna leave me because of this, but it's gonna go deeper. And the search, and the exploration and the trying to teach, I think maybe the practice, maybe it has to be more consistent. Maybe it has to be more people together, like you say. And I know you're doing that in your own academy. I think that having experienced some of what's miraculous in ways that did not fit with my self-image at all, having experienced some of what was possible in ways that did not fit with my worldview at all. So, and many, many times in many ways. So that makes me, that coupled with the fact that the Rebbe said Mashiach has to come now and we have to make it happen now. That this is the last generation of exile and the first generation of redemption. And then, all of the light, and that he's he's the last of the like present in our, I saw the Rebbe's face day in and day out for many years. So it's not, it's the most recent, the most complete. Anyway, I just can't, I find myself, I want to learn from all of this. I really do. I want to grow. I want to expand. Like I'm, a little bit single-minded. Although I'm not sure I can change that, I certainly can deepen it. I certainly can broaden the channel of my single-mindedness. But I can't let go of that this now. And if it didn't happen now, so it must happen now. And if it didn't happen now, it has to happen now. And the Rebbe said yet long ago that even though everybody needs to experience tshuva, return to this, the awakened self, return to God, but our generation collectively, he said already in 1991, that our generation, or two, I think one, that our generation collectively has experienced enough, has performed tshuva enough for Mashiach to come, even though on an individual level, we still need to make that practice. And again, I'm back to saying maybe it's one, maybe one person who says the whole thing has to happen fully before we're actually in, even when Moshe went to redeem after the burning bush, he went to redeem the people and he went with the message. And he gave a message, and God said, the time is now, go tell the people, go tell Pharaoh, whatever. And then things went south, right? And he disappeared. He left the country, but the plague stopped, right? So at that point, maybe the messianic process happens, certainly it does, we can see in reality that it happens in shlabim, it happens in phases and stages.
Kima.
Sorry?
Kima. It happens level by level.
Level by level.
Can I say one thing? I'm really excited by your authenticity and you're living with a question, you're courageous enough to bring up something very core to who you are in a public setting, and even, off the record, we've had these conversations together, and they've been kind of difficult conversations, right? And there's something I want to add to it, but I'm almost extremely trepidatious because I'm excited because you're being really authentic, and I want to kind of meet that place myself, but I also want to be respectful of your values. I'm not Chabadnik. I've read lots and lots of Chabad Hasidus. I call my son Shnei Zalman. I adore the Mittler Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe Rashab is my favorite. And got all his film on my book. So you can't even see it. I'm probably just pointing to comic books right now.
We'll take your word for it.
I'll take my word for it. It's very. But for me, I don't have to answer that question because I'm not Chabadnik. I don't have to live with that dilemma. But the one thing I will say is that from the outside looking in, that means I don't have the depth and I don't have the commitment to the Rebbe's words in that sense. From the outside looking in, I don't see it ultimately, and I'm definitely being hyper-reductionistic right now. I don't see it as an ultimate contradiction. I get why philosophically it is, but at the end of the day, you want Mashiach now. But you're also going shopping for Shabbos. And you want Mashiach now, but you're also planning an online program in a month and building up a campaign for that, right? Mm-hmm. And I want Mashiach now, but from my understanding, it's not helpful and sometimes destructive to say Mashiach now, because there's this, I believe there's a concern of spiritual bypassing. And that's what Sarah Yehudit was saying before. There's also the bread of shame. There's also no, I want to earn and acquire, and not even just from an ego place. That there's I get this is a contradiction. There's birurim. There's a process that we have to go through. There is work to be done. The fact that people aren't open to Mashiach coming now or don't want it enough is itself part of the tikkun. So the simple thing, while not disagreeing, just sharing the other side, the Baal Shem Tov is very, very clear of the process as in other spiritual masters. Halavai Mashiach will walk up right now and we can, blow the shofar before we end this online discussion. But right now, what is the work that we have to do? A Jew has to live with duality, that I am done and complete, ein on milvado right now, b'tachan, and also I have a shtadlis, I have effort to do in the world. And I don't believe, I'm pretty ignorant about the Rebbe's works, you'll forgive me, I don't believe he ever said, put your feet on the couch because the work is done.
Of course not.
Of course not, right? So
where did that come into the conversation? The first,
right,
where I posed the question, I'm not cutting you off. I just want to remind everybody. The question I posed was, what is in the way? What is the next thing? Why are we not there all the way when I've experienced part of the way?
Because the answer is it's called a gadlus rishon. The answer is because part of the development process of every individual is we are taken out of our limited perception. And we are shown, I have a supernatural crazy story of how I got there. I have zero doubt that Sarah Yehudit has more than one of those kind of things, right? And we're shown a greater potential for ourselves and humanity, a supernatural access point. And then we're dropped back in, which is Katniss, shiny, and then is our chance to earn it, to build it, to struggle for it, etc. And we all know that model, right? That's the lightning flash. And therefore, the work cut out, every day and every second we can say Mashiach now, but I still have to prepare for Shabbos. And I still have to keep working and plan the project next week. And therefore, the work to be done is the work of the Baal Shem Tov. I mean, we all have that drawing of our soul towards Kabbalah and Chassidus, and so did the Vilna Gaon, and he said it, is that we sense this wave of energy of enlightenment. We sense this opening of consciousness, and we all have our words for it. And our job is to push the world, kima kima, step by step, towards that goal. And you can say, if you're Chabadnik, you can say Mashiach now, and I can say Mashiach when he gets here. But together, we want to set up these programs. We want to teach these teachings in theory and in practice. Where is the contradiction for you on that point? I don't think you disagree.
The contradiction is your statement that everybody has to get there, and that it has to be that.
Okay, so I'm going to read.
Sorry, you just said that spiritual bypass. See, I'm going to stand for the fact that for 5,780 years, human beings have suffered. And human beings have been loyal to God, even though not all, maybe not even most, but certainly many.
Let me make it easy for you. The word in marketing And the word in science is the concept of a critical mass. I do not believe every person needs to get there. But the law of, what's the law of, not innovation, the law of infusion of, everyone knows that the early adopters, the late adopters, you know, how any new idea moves through a society.
Right.
So
Adoption.
that is always, there's the Siddiqim who bring the consciousness into the world. There's all these big neshamas and that follow through.
Innovators, early adopters.
Right, and that's right. And I believe what you're supposed to get, and I think the language is like 18%, and then it tips over the system, right? So if you can get 1/5 of a system involved, then it can go straight mainstream. My understanding is, and you know, elevation is set up with certain strategies, is that we're not going to make the whole world religious. You're going to make every secular Jew religious? Are you going to make everyone spiritual and meditate? The answer is no. We're after a critical mass, enough people, enough of the right people to open up the channels. And then it's Hashem's cheshbon, it's Mashiach's cheshbon. What happens after that? When you read through the Baal Shem Tov's letter, by the way, he doesn't literally say everyone in the world. He says
right,
to the whole.
When your people,
it's up for grabs what you do with that. But we all sense it means it's going wide, it's going large, right? And I mean, for me, that's a critical mass. It goes out to the world. People know it. They're experiencing it. It's around. It's in the avirah. It's in the energy. Who Hashem does or doesn't want to access that, that's not.
It is in the energy. It is in the energy. It's not in the energy from Torah. It is in the energy. And that's what every Tom, Dick, and Harry, so to speak, every Joe and Charlotte are like able to learn energy healing, are talking about quantum physics, understand that our consciousness creates. How about The Secret? How about, what the belief do we know? It is out there. What it's missing is it's not connected to Torah. It's not connected to the one picture, to God's vision.
But that's further illustrating the point.
People, this is Yehudim. This is Yehudim.
That's more work that has to be done.
Who says if there was a collaboration on this kind of conversation right now when everybody's focused on the internet and everybody's looking for solutions? Who's to say that it wouldn't go viral across to reach 1 billion people and the people wouldn't put the pieces together? Who's to say? Or another event.
We all agree that. So that's exactly the point.
Our part of the puzzle, but sorry.
That's exactly the point. That's the work we're doing. That's to take it to the next level. To take the Torah.
But who's to say that the building process all has to be done by us? Like this idea of no shortcuts. That's what I don't agree with. So who's
it's a no-brainer. It's not our work to finish the job, but it's a no-brainer with your sensitivities. I read Yehudit's books when I was in yeshiva. I thought I was going off the derech, these deep ideas, which Torah she's bringing out with. Now I read the Torahs, I know where she's getting them from, and that's exactly right. But I didn't know it existed, and people start to push it out with the neshamas that you all have, of that sensitivity, of that depth, of that understandings of the mysteries, the trying to bring out that Torah Chadasha. Mashiach's not here. I look at my watch, he's not here yet. So I take one step forward to share a bit more. I take one step forward to write a seminar, I write another book, I run another program, I go another lecture tour, I have a chabur and teach the meditation. When Hashem wants to turn up, he'll turn it up. But right now, he's not here, so I take another step. The conversation.
Maybe the very fact that we're having this conversation that the coronavirus is around, that you're passionate about what you're passionate, and each person is, maybe that is a sign of Mashiach being here, actually, as is also explained in Chabad Hasidus in some places, and working from within us, under the ground, behind the surface.
It's the awe of Mashiach. It's the awe of Eliyahu Navi whispering the messianic teachings into our ears, as Chazal
There's
said.
it's a very small point in a way. I mean, since we're getting this real, I want to make sure that I'm understood. And people can make the conclusions that they make, it's whatever, it's who knows. But it's a very subtle difference, but it's a very powerful difference. Because we all agree that we need to keep doing the work. We all agree that the inner Torah has to spread. We all agree that the world, the consciousness has to rise. Oh, there's no question about that. We all agree Mashiach is coming. We all agree this is the messianic process. The one place that where I feel that there's a tiny but quantum, in a way, difference is that something must happen in order for God to step in and the final revelation to occur. That's where I'm disagreeing. Like just because it was said here, we know Elu Velu Divrei Elokim Chaim, also, of course, I'm not going to argue with the Baal Shem Tov, but I take my interpretations from the followers of the Baal Shem Tov. In any case, even when it comes to prophecy, it's consciousness dependent. So I'm going to just I know Yehudit wants to say something. I just want to finish the point. I'll stop. Thank you for indulging me.
No,
I don't get to
You
express,
agree? You agree
what?
that something needs to happen? Are you saying you?
No,
Oh, you don't.
no.
I wasn't
No,
sure what
I
you were
believe, because I believe, like the Rambam says, I believe that it can happen at any time. I see results of it, but it's not the full picture. I believe that as long as it doesn't happen, we are the operating system bringing it into revelation. Binyan Malchus is happening under the surface, where even the Nagan, talks about the 1990, 91, whatever it is, that there's something shifted in the universe. The Rebbe said we're in Yemos Mashiach B'Pashtus. We're literally in the days of of Mashiach, when the Rambam says in those days don't expect the reality to drastically change, but that's the first stage of the messianic process. But the difference is, it's like here's the bottom line, and that's when I'm going to shut up after I say the bottom line. So I'm just wondering, not just now. I was wondering this morning when I was with my class. I'm wondering all the time. Is the key of the consciousness, that the rectified consciousness that we're leaning into, the elevated consciousness, is the key that we need to know that it already exists right here and now in another dimension, and if we can touch it, it can flood in. Like I don't believe that everybody needs to do the same work. That's not what I learned from the Mittler Rebbe, for example. That's not. I don't believe that. And even though, meanwhile, yes, spread it. As long as people are still getting sick and people are still have been dying, that God forbid, a billion times, then clearly it's not over. I think that we're wedded. I was just talking about this with my class, in a small group this morning on Zoom. I feel like we're addicted to doing the work. I feel there's a part of us that's addicted to having playing the role, to continuous growing. And I think that and I'm not saying this because the Rebbe said it, although maybe that's why I think it, because it permeated my brain. But it's also from a human perspective and from a soul perspective. How is it okay to say that the world should stay in darkness because I'm not enlightened enough? How is it to say that people should? How is it right? How is it?
That's the definition of reality, though, right?
To say that, I got lost.
We are in darkness because we don't have divine consciousness yet, and the process of history is to do that work.
God, we have been doing that work. God can turn on the lights. I'm just sharing my stance. I can't prove my point.
He can. I would argue he can. And I want to hear what Yehudit says on this. He can, but the fact that he hasn't
means he hasn't yet.
Yes, because
maybe it's because we are addicted. Maybe it's because we are addicted. Maybe it's because we said. Sorry, Yehudit said this. She said this herself. She said, "There's a part of me that wants geula, but there's a part of me that doesn't, because I don't want the bread of shame." Okay, so maybe God's saying, "Okay,
there's a part of me that
all right, I'm not going to force it on you."
There's a part of me that wants divine revelation, and there's an ego self that doesn't. And that's exactly the work of this world. I have a question for you. Do you believe that the work is done, but Hashem is holding the whole world hostage right now to coronavirus just to make us suffer?
To make us suffer?
For no reason whatsoever.
No, but maybe
no, of course you don't. So therefore, there
is a way to shortcut the system. Bitachon, connecting to Soviet. There are ways to shortcut the system, but they are consciousness dependent, but not necessarily on everybody going through the same.
Well, let's take out the word everybody. There's still work to be done. Otherwise,
even a critical mass.
Can I say one person? I don't think it's a contradiction, Shifra. I don't think it's a contradiction, because I think that, once again, people are already coming to this reality on their own, from their frameworks, from the life, from the backgrounds that they're coming from, just like you did. And there are people that come, and my only reason before about mentioning the whole thing about psychedelics is people are coming from a certain background. It could be even Eastern religions or things like that, which is what was happening in the 60s, where people were coming. There was like a whole massive teshuvah. There was a certain awareness. So I think that there's already a framework. There you go. So I think there's a framework already in the world for something, for this awareness. And our job is to be there to supply them with the authentic,
That's, yeah.
with the
that feels true to
authentic
me.
actual wares. And that's why it says, Yafutzu ma'inosecha chutza, like taking, and the Rebbe actually explained it, each part of this. The Yafutzu is like spreading it out. It should be completely spread out, like, everywhere. Yafutzu ma'inosecha. And the mayan is actually connected to the wellspring. In other words, it has to be content rich. It has to be authentic. It has to come from the actual source. And it can't be some new agey kind of a thing, which is trying to lower the truth of Torah to make it.
God wants to be revealed in the world, not just
Right.
God's power is God.
So once that is revealed, outwards, then there is already a certain critical mass that is here. And that's why it's not a contradiction to it happening right now, because technically speaking, if we get the point, it says tshuva could be done b'shaitar chada b'riga chada. The Zohar says like one moment. In halacha, person in the Talmud says if a person betroths a woman on the condition that he is a tzaddik, that he is a righteous person, and even though he's completely the opposite, he hasn't done anything good in the last who knows how long, mikudesha, she's betrothed. Why? Because Shema hirer tshuva belibo. Even he thought one thought of tshuva in his mind, and the Talmud says, tshuva mevir refuah la'olam. Tshuva brings healing to the world, brings redemption. Tshuva does everything. The Rambam brings it down, and all the greats speak about it. So, and that's talking about that framework of just the springboard of transformation that could happen immediately, because there already is the framework over here. There's already such a mass. And so it's not a contradiction between Yehudim Kamoscha of the Baal Shem Tov and it happening this moment. It's just the question is, I think, and this is based on the Orach Chaim HaKadosh, that why did God wait until the 49th level of impurity to take us out? Could have taken us out on the 30th or the 20th, right? Why do you wait all the way? Why? Because the answer is because he wanted all those lower levels to be transformed. That's what the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says, that he wanted all these lower dimensions to be transformed. So God in his ultimate mercy is waiting for everyone, is waiting for people, is waiting and wants and saying, please, like transform, come on, like open up, stop being egocentric, like let's do this, let's be this, let's become this. And so God is waiting for us, and is waiting, and it's in he's such a merciful God. God is so good that he wants everyone to become
He wants everyone on board.
Yeah.
Sarah Yehudit, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, Yehudit.
Well, I mean, I first wanted to mention that it does say in the Talmud that if even one person would do tshuva down through every layer and cell of their being, it would bring healing to the world. It would bring Mashiach. And so, I mean, in terms of like critical mass or everyone, I mean, even if one person, that person would be Mashiach, and they're a hub soul that's connected to all of us through spokes or whatever. And so it's our dead weight that is in some sense keeping that individual from doing tshuva down through every layer of his being. But really, it only takes one person thoroughly. But I also wanted to say that if Hashem could bring Mashiach now, and it would be good really for us, and the good would be sustained, like what kind of God wouldn't do that? Like, of course Hashem would do that. And so it's clear that there's like something that needs to happen before the shift occurs, only because that shift has to sustain its trajectory, its upward draft for an eternity and eternities of eternities. And somehow we need enough propulsion to be able to fuel us through eternity. And the other thing I wanted to say was that I didn't say really that I because of bread of shame, don't want Mashiach now. It's just that there's this, like the Ari talks about Adam, one of the ways of understanding why Adam ate from the Eitz Hadat was not to grab some fruit, but because of the bread of shame, knowing that it was going to create difficulty and wanting to have to work it through. And we inherit that. That's our Rishimu. That's our inheritance. And there are places in ourselves that are just aligned with that because it was our truth. And it probably is a truth in a certain way.
What Adam's presumption when he Chava's
that we are supposed, there is work we are supposed to do. That's the Isser V'Shel Dilatata. That's the Bigyan Malchus. That's that there's no king without a nation that's choosing him willfully, consciously. That is the work. That there's a truth. Adam Avishon wasn't, a Baal Taiva. He just lusted after an apple and ate it, right?
Right. No. I get that. No, I'm just.
No, I'm not saying you think that. We're just talking it out. He had the deepest of the deep Havamina. The angels thought he was spinning. He had I'm talking about. He had a very deep understanding reality, which is off by the most microcosmical. I just made up that word.
Maybe or maybe not. We're going to have to see about
that's
that.
Right.
That's right. I heard it was Chava.
But at the end of the day, he crashed the quantum wave and we all fell. But the thought was maybe there's something I'm supposed to do myself. And at the end of the day, we can all say, he was off. But the truth is, the essence of life is actually about that we are supposed to do the work. Otherwise, we're robots. Otherwise, there's no purpose.
That's their B'tachtonim. There's no question that's the
we don't know whether they chose right or wrong. Really,
right? We'll find out in the final. The butler did it. We'll find out at the end. We don't want to ruin.
It depends on where you're looking from. They chose what, right? And it's the Alter Rebbe talks about it that it was Nora Lilo B'nei Adam. God foisted this plot on man. It was all planned. And yet it was from a deeper level. Everything depends on the dimension that you're looking at it from. And I think maybe this too, that there, again, I guess I believe that you're all right. Everybody's right here, except I want to know if one person can or if one group of people can while trying to spread across the world.
I don't know why you're fixated on that point. I'm going to suggest. Soon. I'm going to suggest the axioms.
You do know why I'm fixated.
No. I'm going to suggest the axioms that I think we all believe in, based on what we've just said. So I'm going to review the axioms, right? And let's see where we all if there's division or not. Now, axiom number 1: Hashem would not keep our head underwater if He was ready to take us out. He would not let the world suffer more if we were ready to do it.
If it wasn't for our good. If it wasn't
for our good. Number 1. If there wasn't
one more instant that. Until now it wasn't good.
We all agree, all in favor, say aye, good. Now, number 2 is good. Number 2 is, and therefore, if we're still here, and I'm not trying to be controversial with Chabad teachers, whatever, there must be more work to do. There must be something we haven't done, okay? In our consciousness, our belief in Mashiach, that I believe what a lot of the Tzaddikim say, that the 4/5 rule from Egypt, that when Hashem rushed us out, 4/5 of the Jews had to die because we weren't all ready. But when Hashem brings Mashiach, He doesn't want to leave the souls of the world behind. And this is what the Tzaddikim say. He wants to give it as much time as possible with tremendous compassion to bring on board as many possible. That's what I think Sarah would say. So the energy rises up so as many people can come along. And therefore, yes.
There's actually a Baal Shem Tov story exactly about that, about the I don't know, the court on high ruling that it's taking too long because there's all these schleppers, and the Baal Shem Tov said, I'm going to be their protector, and I'm going to take responsibility for bringing them along, but we can't bring Mashiach until everybody.
Right.
So that story from the Maggid also, where the Maggid took his Chavrai Kadisha and said, "Let's go greet Mashiach," and they're like, "Oh no," he said, "Who is appropriate to be Mashiach?" And they were all nervous to say who, and they lost the moment. And
that's the Ari Kadosh. That's the Ari Kadosh.
I read it in the name of the Maggid, but okay. The Ari was, let's go greet Mashiach before Shabbos. Let's go.
The Maggid of Koznitz.
Oh, maybe.
But there's
okay.
also,
I
okay.
always remember
So,
the-
so I'm going to go back to the axioms. I want to see. So number one, we believe Hashem would never keep us underwater if he could take us out. I think we all agree on that point. Number two is, and Hashem wants to take out as many as possible. And the three, and here's the key point, and I'm not trying to be controversial. The key point is simply, my understanding is, if he can't take us out until we're done, and he hasn't taken us out, then there must be more work to do. And however you define that box, it's because we don't believe in Mashiach, it's because there's more Burim, but the Rebbe said there's no more Burim. However you define it, there is work to do because we're not out yet. Could Hashem take us out in a moment? 100%. Has he? No. Implication, there's more work to be done. And it's not...
There's one other possible way to look at it. What if Hashem is holding us underwater because he's waiting for us to realize, wait a minute, I can just stand up.
That is more work to be done.
No, maybe, but it's not more work to be done over time. It's like now. It's like,
But
what
if
if
you
it's
don't
possible
do it
now?
because you don't have the awareness, the understanding, the Torah, the consciousness.
I think the work is opening up our eyes, which is actually what the Rabbi did say at the end of 1992. Today is, by the way, Chav Zayin
Adar, right?
Chav Zayin Adar, which
It's the
is
side of the Leshem.
Yes.
Really? It's
Yeah.
the Rebbe had 2 strokes on 2 years apart of Zayin
on
Adar.
this day, and there was anyways, the idea of opening up our eyes is something which I think this contradiction is really all about. Well, if everything is really technically there, I mean, we live in a beautiful world, beautiful paradise.
Which we
how do
can't
we-
enjoy because we're stuck in our homes right now.
They all look out the window.
Well, maybe the paradise first is
Just
how
to
do
bring
we
it
look,
back to the corona.
how do we look at our spouse, and how do we look at our children?
She's
And how
trying to
do
make
we
it
make that
topical.
into a paradise? That's really the biggest
Okay.
the biggest question. So opening up our eyes is really the I believe is the work, and that's the big question.
But that is work, just to push the point. You know, let's all agree. The Rebbe didn't literally mean open up our eyes. He didn't literally mean eyes are closed. He means open up our awareness, our consciousness that Hashem is with us. That is the blocks.
That
That's
there's
the
signs of
Gevurim.
redemption taking
Where our
place in
ego
our world is
invested,
part of
we
opening
don't
your
want it.
eyes.
That is the work that hasn't been done. When you do a meditation retreat, when you teach someone Kabbalah, when you give someone over into trauma therapy, you know, addiction therapy, that is the work of opening the eyes. And Pshat is, I see it as intellectually contradictory to say all the work has been done, we just have to open our eyes. That's kind of saying I'm rich now and I have to get a job so I can make some money. Right? If I have to open our eyes, we have to do the work, right? And if Hashem wants to bring Mashiach tomorrow, amazing. Tonight, amazing. But until then, if he's holding us underwater, the work of opening the eyes is the Burim, is the Tikkun Amidas, is the learning more Torah, is getting it further out into the world.
Yes to the work,
Yeah.
and
Right.
I am still not sure if there isn't some right now available shift in consciousness that would allow real healing, that would allow
And the yearning for that consciousness and the trying to discover it and the trying to awaken it is the work.
And you see that it takes a lot of work.
see that what?
And you're
That what?
troubled.
What's
Shifra,
our-
you're
I didn't hear
troubled by the
Yehudit.
work.
I didn't hear sorry
You see that it takes a lot of work, all that you do in the world and arranging these seminars, and you know, it's
And you're troubled by the work, Shifra Chana. You're saying so much
No,
work being done and it's not enough. So
I'm not troubled. I'm not troubled by work. I'm troubled by suffering.
That's the work.
It's not this. It is not the same thing. I'm sorry. And by the way, you said a while back that we simply need to lift up.Maybe you didn't say simply, but we need to lift up this sickness, the illness, to the divine source, and then it heals. And then I followed that by, so why is that not happening yet? I guess you would say that we're not reaching the divine source, or we're not reaching the divine source in a consistent enough way.
I don't think the average Jew knows how to do that. I've even heard those teachings. Have ever done.
People are actually asking if there's something practical that, and not only for Jews. Like there's some people who are not Jewish on the call, and they are, at least one has expressed a desire to know what people can do in the face of, in this condition of fragmentation, that the world
I think
is
the rabbi
fragmented,
said
the
drink
world is
wine. Didn't you
full of
suggest that, Rabbi
darkness.
Cohen, earlier?
That's a good first step, actually. I've got
The
coconut
Gemara
water, but
says-
after this, I'm gonna upgrade.
He takes your words very seriously, l'chaim.
I'll try anything.
La'etz chaim.
But maybe give is a very important thing.
That what I didn't.
And giving
What did you say?
charity.
Oh, giving
and the
charity.
idea
Okay, giving.
Charity is a very important mitzvah, being and recognizing that our actions, each action that we do to better the world around us, is bringing us a step closer to that reality. So one more step, one more mitzvah could put us at the 80-20 rule, right? That 20%, or who knows?
Maybe I should stop.
What? No, what were you going to say?
I'm just wondering if like, if we would just, as a possibility, who knows, and we all have our perspective on it, which probably the truth is deeper than all of them. But what if the one more piece isn't just a simple addition? It's like, maybe it's not like adding one to a million, but maybe it's like adding the one in front of the million zeros. In other words, maybe like I heard that Yitzchak Ginsburg, Rabbi Ginsburg, said that that Mashiach will come by putting the head of the Torah on Chachmas Mitzrayim, on the wisdom of the secular and mystical wisdom, I guess that's what somebody could define it better, of Egypt, where there were mystery schools and so forth. And I guess that means through every generation. So what if the is an awareness of the messianic process being real now, and it's in the stream of that and the light of that everything becomes uplifted, everything that's already existing on this dimension of 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, and we need 20, we only have 3 or whatever. But maybe with that, maybe this, like a light from a deeper, an awareness of the deeper dimension that is actually in this dimension as a maki thing even, is the missing piece that will lift everything up and unify everything.
Which is that one, I think.
Right, that's the one, right. So maybe it's not, but it's not a 1 + 1. Like I always had a problem with the fact that my mom says that, I shouldn't say I have a problem with it, but it never made sense to me, which is my problem, but that the Rambam says that we need to view the world as a scale completely balanced between good and evil, and our one thought, speech, or action, word or action can tip the scales to salvation. So that didn't make sense to me. Like it didn't. Like I agreed with you, sorry, Yehudit, when you came on and said people are just saying it's more. We should just say Tehillim. It can't be that. It's a time for innovation. So on every level, I feel what context is, whatever the conversation is that we're looking at, the picture that we're looking at, I think that there needs to be something, not just a process, not just reviving the old process, the ancient holy process, but something that we could. It's just what I feel. I can't prove it, but let's say it's a question. It's a question for Hashem. Hashem, please answer the question. If this is missing piece, that's a core piece, like a collected piece that will uplift everything, like the centerpiece that will cause all the other pieces to take a different shape. And that's, I think, maybe what I'm looking for. And in the meantime, whatever I learn, I teach. I'm coronavirus situation, self-quarantine will hopefully provide an opportunity once I'm less out on, once I do fewer interviews, I'll have more time to learn. Even this morning, I had more time to learn and to teach and to meditate and to work on healing and, whatever the method is. But I guess that's what I want to, I don't have to keep arguing, because why argue? It's all true. It's like none of us is there completely, but I just wonder if it's just something that's already existing on the level of koach, just slightly, like the present moment, it exists.
Rav Kook says Rav Kook says that when Mashiach comes, we're not going to say science anymore, but we're going to see the godliness. That's
Right.
really all behind. That's all behind it. We're not going to look at mathematics, and Kabbalists, by the way, didn't look at mathematics as just being just math. Talking about Rabbi Ginsburg over there, he's a mathematician, and
Right.
so it's like everything is interconnected, everything is united, everything is really one. It's just our it's our view on it. It's our disjointed view. It's our gulistic, exile type of point of view that we have on different aspects as being disconnected. But really, it's all It's all united. It's all one.
Rabbi Cohen, just adding to that point, that's exactly what I think it's saying in Kabbalah. That's exactly what you see in the Vilna Gaon, the Leshem. You see that in many places. Exactly that point. That science and Torah will be considered one thing. You mentioned Rav Kook. Rav Kook says, it's part of the Messianic process that we're going to have to learn the Agaditas and the halachic parts of the Talmud together, because they will not be in the same way that science, which is considered lower wisdom, and Torah, which is considered upper wisdom, need to be united. In the same dimension, that the halachic element and the mystical element needs to be united. But that hasn't been done yet. There's people writing about that. There's thousands of people getting into that, but we don't see that happening yet. There's people speaking with that sensitivity, but there's no doubt to, I think, any of us, yes, Mashiach should come now, but that in the coming years, we will see literally, I have no doubt, scientists, studying quantum mechanics and all these kind of superstring theory will actually get the answers from Torah. And the Torah will be manifest through those things, and we're not there. We're not seeing it. We're not yet seeing that when the Zohar says that the children are learning halacha, they're going to be learning Kabbalah and understanding that yet. The Zohar says it explicitly. So these are the things that I'm excited to see, and these are the things that all our sources speak explicitly about. That unity on all these levels and all the dimensions of wisdom and experience. And this is what makes me say, of course, I want Mashiach now, but if he doesn't come, it's because that's the end game Hashem is playing for. And our neshamas, all of them, would be thrilled and delirious to be in a world where we saw all those walls break down and all those ideas informing all those other ideas. And that's why I kind of say, Hashem, I get what you're playing towards. I get what kima actually means, that he's taking us to that place, but the exponential revelation. But I see that we're not there yet. And I see how amazing it would be if everyone in the world could do Devekus, and everyone could live in that state of consciousness, and everyone would see secular and religious are words that don't mean anything anymore, because we see the absolute truth and mitzias of the unity of all things. And that's what they actually say it's going to look like. So yes, I want Mashiach now, but as he's not coming, it's thrilling to watch it all come together, knowing the destination that's being discussed. That's my understanding.
And the connection of body and soul, the connection of talking about healing, and maybe where we started off with full circle, is the source of illness is this disconnection, and the source of healing is connection.
Right. The connection of religious and secular is also one of these paradigms that will break down.
100%. And I always say there's much more of a connection that we think between Tel Aviv and Tzfat, for example. And then
you live in Tel Aviv, right?
How'd you know?
That was a joke.
One of my good friends does live in Tel Aviv.
Walks a dog on the beach.
Like Tel Aviv. And I really connect to a lot of Tel Aviv type of people that are just very open-minded, and they're almost, well, I'm not talking about necessarily that level of open-minded, but I'm saying open-minded to something else, and creative, and just innovative. And, Israel is this country of innovation. And because we've got such creativity, and so our spirituality and our creativity have to come as one.
Absolutely. And I love teaching in Tel Aviv. I'm sure anyone that's been, there's so much energy there, and there's so much deep thinking and sensitivity there. I think anyone that teaches Panemius knows in some of those places, you've been to San Francisco, there's such profound kalim and light that people are so open and understand that in deeper levels. And that's one of the yichudim, the unities that I have, has not been fully revealed yet. I believe the future of Kabbalah and meditation, all that stuff is in Tel Aviv, because there's incredible insight and knowledge and sophistication of thinking.
100%. And it's the relatability to them. It's the relatability, the ability to talk to them, and the ability to bring it down in a, we could say, user-friendly way, in a way that doesn't take away from the authenticity of where it really comes from, but at the same time being, we could say, even like, the word is maybe normal, is being like or someone used emotionally, having the EQ, having the emotional sensitivity of realizing, that back and forth with the individual. And I think that, and I think we're definitely at a cusp of what we need to do is to really do that.
Yeah, I see a lot of kalim in those places. I see a lot of deep souls in those places, and I'm, thrilled to be with the people that are sharing Torah and reaching. I don't want to get controversial as we're wrapping this up, but sometimes I feel, and I know Tzaddikim that said this, that I can teach deeper secrets in Tel Aviv than I can teach in Jerusalem, and that's part of the yichudim that I think Hashem right now is bringing together. And yes, I want Mashiach now, but I'm really excited to see it all come out, that all souls open up, that we are able to bring all that light out. And I think that's an opportunity. I think, I'll pray every day for Mashiach now, but I think that's the end game Hashem is playing towards. That's what the Baal Shem Tov says. So Vilna Gaon says he's going to lift up those souls. He's going to lift up all of our souls. It's going to unite all those opposites, create deep connection. And we will have, completed the goal, which is in every secular, religious, and science and Torah and body, body and mind, body, teachings are coming out in science, in inner health, all head and heart teachings, all the unities are coming together, and I'm excited to see how they play out. And then you see that Hashem's going to turn the physicality into spirituality, the secular into spirituality, the science is all going to, and that's the unity that Hashem held on till the end for. And that's what I think, the deep understanding that the Baal Shem, into the chutzah, into all the externalities.
And I think that requires radical innovation and radical love, like selfless level of love, avas chinam. It requires that, what Sari was saying about innovation, because once again, we could become so compartmentalized. We don't speak to this person. We don't deal with this type of person. And regarding that open-mindedness of Tel Aviv, well, I in a sense is where I teach. I've spoken to over 10,000 birthright groups, and so we've, one day they called me up, Rabbi Cohen. Okay, we've got this special group over here, and it was a group of gay and trans, and I have to say that they were so receptive. And there was such an openness there. And at first it took a little bit of like, how should I deal with this? But then I was like, you know what? Truth is truth and love is love. And we can't look at the externality. And it turned out to be one of my best groups that I've ever had. Out of 10,000, birthright students that I spoke to in a workshop that we do. It was so incredible. They were so receptive. And so what I'm saying is, like, on the external level, we've got this, like, these people who are sort of, yes, I mean, they're, okay, let's not, I don't want to really push the negative aspect of it, but there's so much positive that's there. So working with the positives and working with how could we give, and how could we share truth, and how could we be united as opposed to different than each other.
Beautiful. I just want to say on that point, what is the
spreading of the well springs of the mystical Torah to the farthest reaches? The
that's how translated it, but the word chutzah Chutz means outside of. Chutz min hamachana, right? You know, there's religious and then there's science. Science is on the outside. Do you know what I mean? There's religious and then there's the secular people. You know, we learn the halach, we don't learn the agadah, we don't learn the mystical part, right? It means that, you know, this idea that even the externality, even the other will be revealed to be connected to the source. You know, the famous, so you think Gamzu the Tova, this is also for the good. So what's the Zu? The Zu represents the Malchus, the external. Even the external is also Tova, is also good, is also divine. And that for me is the chutz. The Basam Tov doesn't actually say to the whole of the world on the internet online, but the whole of the world. The internet is not holy, the Beis Medrash is holy, the home is holy. The answer is into all the things that seem the other and the external, there too will be good, there too will be light, there too will be revelation. And that's the birurim, and that's, we see those wellsprings opening up, but we're not there yet.
That brings us maybe full circle.
What's our Yehudit say?
When I brought that teaching of the Magid at the end, Chashuv Yoter, that he says that it's actually even more chashuv, more of a bedecking of the Shekhinah. The
innovation. A lot of people probably miss that.
The Yehudim of chutzah, that the day-to-day, like secular life, and bringing a remembrance of Hashem and a consciousness of Hashem into that is actually a tikkun that never has been before, and it's chashuv yoter. That's what he said.
And that's how Yehudit's whole Torah about the incense, that it means the external will maintain its individuality, but that itself will be illuminated. And that is the greatest cover. That is the greatest revelation. That's the Ruach HaKodesh, which is greater than the Nevuah, right? And that's what Hashem wants. Hashem, the final messianic pit is it won't just be in the Beis Medrash. It just won't be in the Torah. That there will be no chutz, because everything will be inter-included. But it will have its individualism. That's the Keturahs. That's the healing. But that individualistic nature will shine, you know, revelation, divine revelation. And that's called Malchus, right? That's the Binyan Malchus. That's the Binyan Nuk. It itself has been the Birurim and now completed. It is done. And now it can reveal its divine essence uniquely.
And that's the 11th spice that we're talking about, the Ketoret, the Gelbana, the one that doesn't make it to the minyan, the one that's not the number 10. They don't look exactly perfect, but they're the number 11, and they are that beautiful spice. I mean, they just make it all perfect. So perhaps that's the antidote. That's to the Magefa, right, is the idea of the Ketoret, but bringing down the Ketoret in a very practical way of having this radical level of love, of creativity, of you know, spreading the well springs outwards to the number 11. Right.
I think we did it. I think we brought it full circle.
Is there any final words? What would you like to have for your last meal before the stores all close? Anything anyone wants to say that wasn't said yet? Just we'll go around in a circle and then we will say goodbye for the moment. Sorry, Yehudit?
Is there anything? I guess just a prayer, maybe, that Hashem should help us to tap into our pure creativity that's aligned and inspired by his, her, its guiding Ruach HaKodesh, and to help us to find the most good-serving, God-serving, and spiritually productive option in each moment, and to choose it with a whole heart.
Amen.
Amen. Doniel?
I just want to say amen to that. And I also want to thank Sarah Yehudit for her eating his tikkun book, which I read in Yeshiva and was awesome.
Oh, unbelievable.
I've never actually met her before, so I just want to say thank you for that work. I want to go on record and say I bought at least 30 copies and I handed it out to people. And, you know, parenthetically to our whole conversation, thank you. But besides that, I think we steiged hard together and we came out good. And thank you, Shifra, kind of for your authenticity. I think you unlocked the conversation to a deeper level where you were able to put a real personal, deep challenge on the table, and thank you for that. May you always be an embodiment of being true to your neshama and true to your chassidus, and at the same time open and learning. And these are the two.
Amen.
Really.
And that's like on the void of being non-stoppable, committed, and completely open at the same time. That creates the spirit and the Malchus and the Mashiach.
Amen.
Amen. Really, 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 Shifra Chana. Thank you, really, for all that you do.
Thank you so much for doing it with me, Rabbi Amichai, and for everything I've learned from everyone.
Yeah, so I guess as a Cohen, I feel like very connected to blessing, and I feel like words are very, very powerful. And I feel like we have to bless each other and try as much as possible to look at each other, at our spouses, at our children, at our neighbors, and try to give over just positive words and positive encouragement and whatever. And so I'd like to bless you, all of us, and all the listeners. Maybe Birkas Kohanim, why not?
Oh, that would be awesome.
Today.
Oh, we have two Kohanim, right?
Oh.
We have two Kohanim here.
I'm not a Cohen,
you must be a Cohen.
Learning.
You're what? Sorry.
Are you a Cohen?
I'm a non-Cohen Katz. No.
Oh, okay.
I'm learning. I'm okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to just give a blessing, and I did this my last Thursday night class, and everyone was virtually on, and I just like, why not just give a blessing?
So just before you do, can you, or as part of what you do, can you please just briefly explain to everybody what a Cohen is and what the blessing is?
Okay, briefly.
Using as much Hebrew as possible.
Definitely. I just heard David cracking up from the other room.
The Cohen blessing. The Cohen blessing is a drawing down of Moichin into Midos into Malchus. It's.
I was joking about the Hebrew.
Is that enough?
Of the intellect into the emotions of the heart into
what we're gonna do. We're not, and down into this world. And obviously, it's very, very profound blessing. 15 words, connecting to the name of God, Yud-K, and it culminates with shalom, culminates with peace. So, anyways, so let's do it.
Okay. I just want to say one more thing first, because I think that it's really timely. Like, this never came up before, but
okay.
I want to say this primarily benefit of the listeners who are not Jewish, but for everybody. That there's a very small segment, a relatively quite small segment of the people of Israel who are called Kohanim, which is the priests. Then there are the Leviim, who are the how would you translate that? Not the servant. They're from the same lineage, but they assist the Kohanim. They have certain service, and the temple is they'll have much more consistent service. But the point that I'm trying to make is most of us are not. Most of us are just the regular people of Israel. So we receive a blessing from, I'm speaking as an Israelite, we receive the blessing from the Kohanim. It's small. Sometimes you would go to a synagogue and there might be 100 people and there's one Cohen who happens to be there. And this is a lineage that's descended from the brother of Moses, Aaron. And, it's passed on father to son in this line. So when a Cohen, I'm presuming that when a Cohen gives the priestly blessing, it's coming from all the way back from there and from that that anointing, that choosing that God did in this particular lineage, so that it became genetically permanent throughout all generations. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and Cohen.
Okay. Why did I say that? Because
is the acronym.
Yeah. So now for Kli, for vessel.
Vessel.
My point being that, if people are looking, and why some people have said, why do you have to differentiate between people, Jews and non-Jews? I'm telling you, God loves a beautiful painting or an orchestra. We're not all the same. We don't all have the same roles. We all are, as a collective, we all own each other. We all benefit from each other, and we create one much larger superstructure, or superorganism. So I just thought this was a good opportunity to say that, because we have Cohen here who's about to give us the blessing.
Okay. So without further ado, okay. וידבר אדוני אל משה לאמור דבר אל אהרון ואל בניו לאמור כה תברכו את בני ישראל לאמור להם יברכך אדוני וישמרך יאיר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. שמנו את שמי על בני ישראל ואני אברכם.
Amen.
Thank you.
How special.
Shifra,
Okay. What?
I just peeked at my email and I saw that there's a lot of people that are asking, is there a link to see this or is there a...
To see the replay?
Yeah, or to, yeah.
Yes, but I mean, right now I think it's on Facebook. David, is it on Facebook? I have to
Yes,
read
it's
the
streaming
link.
live on Facebook. I'm watching it right now, so they can
Okay,
catch
so-
it on Shifra Chana's page there, and
I
Okay.
have,
Has
my page as
has
well.
it been
I don't-
3 hours,
I
by
don't
the
know
way?
the name. There's it's about 3 hours, yeah. David, can you put a link or say, there's a link. Everybody who signed up for the summit has received the link to the schedule page, which is complex. David likes complex names so that they're all really unique. So it's something like globalgeulahsummit.com/VA-schedule.
He was inspired by
/
Yehudit's tour about the uniqueness of every individual, so he made it unbelievably.
Okay, we'll put a link to that. We'll put a link if you haven't signed up for the summit, please do. It's free. www.globalgeulahsummit.com/viral awakening, and all the replays are posted through the schedule page you'll get. And meanwhile, it's on Facebook and please share it with your friends.
Quick party trick. Can everybody watching right now on Facebook click the love button, and therefore you up the response, upping the algorithm, and therefore more people will see this. There's a lot of people watching.
Do it.
If you click the love button now, then more people will see that.
There are also a lot of people listening on the webcast and the phone.
Great.
So,
So the more people will see it. Thank you for sharing the light.
Yes. Sure.
Okay, thanks everybody. There will be a matrix in like less than half an hour if you want to join. We'll have a lot of space and silence and just like personal prayer. Okay, thanks so much. This was super fun. And
I really enjoyed myself.
a lot of mind expanding food for thought. Okay, that's the way it should be. Take care, everybody. Keep the faith and everybody be healthy.
With everyone and yeah, bless you.
Transferring, let's just do it. Mashiach or not.
Not.